to a brand new episode of the Brickyard Live Show. We are coming to you live on YouTube, whether you're listening to us after the fact or live right now. We definitely appreciate it. And we are here to recap a massive Thanksgiving week of football. We pretty much called every single major game right between the two of us this weekend. So we're going to be breaking down every single game. We had Monday Night Football where Danny DeVito was on the Manning cast and he's there with Eli to sell Jersey Mike sandwiches, and I can't blame them at this point. We also have Eli Manning is now the new head coach for Ole Miss, which is definitely massive news. So we definitely want to go over that as well. But getting into it, how was your Thanksgiving? And was this maybe the best week of football, most consequential week of football of the year so far?
This feels like we've officially reached into pivotal playoff football. I know we still have a few more weeks, but it feels like this is when the NFL really takes off. Now we know which teams we're getting each and every week. And now with every game, wins or losses, you might not be going home. You might not be making the playoffs at this point. My Thanksgiving was great. We watched football all day. We drank a lot of beer, enjoyed some football, ate a lot of food. Couldn't have been any better for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, no, Thanksgiving was good as well. Just made food all day. Was watching The Sopranos, talked to some family on the phone. So all around a good time, and then all around some pretty solid games throughout the NFL as well. Jack White, honestly, with a pretty solid halftime performance for the Lions and Packers game. It was funny, just like I had the sound off, and then I see Eminem pop up out of nowhere. I'm like, Marshall, what are you doing?
I forgot that they did a partner show every year now. He's arranging the halftime show.
Eminem
So,
is.
yeah. So, Jack White, he's a native of Detroit. So, I'm curious how it's going to keep doing it. But, yeah, Jack White comes out, and then you see Eminem come out to do Till I Collapse, classic Eminem song. I was impressed with the halftime show. And then the Cowboys, they had Post Malone, I believe, for the halftime show.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
At
watch
that
that one. I've seen him twice in the past year, and I'm kinda over it at this point. Like, both times I've seen him, he, like, sings in a way where he's almost, like, just losing his voice, and then he, like, is drinking Bud Light, smoking cigarettes the entire time, and you can see him, like, try and snap himself out of it, but his, like, voice will progressively get, like, more hoarse throughout the show. I'm like, "Sounds like you're gonna lose your vocal cords in the next few months, man."
I hope not. But I would at that point we were eating Thanksgiving, so it wasn't able to fully indulge with that game, but at least for the halftime show. But second half of that game was great as far as Chiefs and Cowboys.
Did you have like a traditional Thanksgiving, or do they do like maybe like an Italian version, maybe like an Indian version of Thanksgiving?
So last year they made ribs because I was at my roommate's
Okay.
Thanksgiving for the second year. Last year they made ribs, and I was honestly maybe the best Thanksgiving I've had to this point. But this Thanksgiving, I was at their grandmother's house, and it was the traditional Thanksgiving. So it's the stuffing and turkey and all that stuff. And moving forward for me for Thanksgiving, I don't care. You know that I read the stat. You know that 70% of turkeys are sold during Thanksgiving or Christmas, and the rest is just throughout the year.
70%.
Seventy
I mean, the
percent.
store doesn't really like push them though, to be fair. Like you
But
like
nobody
push like
wants turkey.
chicken.
But nobody wants
Yeah.
turkey. Like a large turkey roast that takes 6 hours to make. It's just like me next year for Thanksgiving. I just want it to be like I bring mac and cheese. You bring tacos. This person brings burgers. This person brings wings. Like, why do we need to have the most traditional, basic Thanksgiving food that nobody craves ever? But except for Thanksgiving, we're supposed to have this giant meal. Like, if we want to have this giant meal, then why don't we have a giant feast of all sorts of food?
Yeah, that's honestly kind of what I did this year. So what I did was I made a boneless butterball turkey in the oven the night before. What is up, Flowers Pod? Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Appreciate you tuning in again. So I made like the turkey the day before, but on Thanksgiving, what I did was I made bison steaks. I got some good old bison ribeyes, fried those up, and I was like, you know what? If the Pilgrims were in Wyoming, if they were in Montana, they probably would have been eating bison because Thanksgiving, mind you, was like over a week long and they went out and they were hunting deer. They were eating venison. They weren't just eating turkey. So I get like the traditional like mashed potatoes, stuffing, cornbread. You kind of have that going. But the Pilgrims also had like venison, they had deer, so we could like incorporate a little bit more barbecue. I know a lot of Southerners like to do brisket now. So if you have like a smoker, some people do brisket. So I think like Thanksgiving, you should be able to make like all kinds of meat. I don't think turkey should be the one thing, but I do think it does get some unnecessary hate. I think some people just don't like it because it's hard to make. And you brought up the stat 70% of them are bought during Thanksgiving, and the other 30% are throughout the year. So, how many of these people actually know how to make a turkey? And I think if you are going to make it, you should deep fry it. And that is the best turkey I've ever had because the skin is a little bit thicker than a chicken's skin. So, you get like that crispy crunch from the skin as well. And then you just pour gravy on top of it. So, like, I do think it's getting some, like, it's kind of just a trend to hate on turkey at this point.
I don't hate turkey. I hate that every Thanksgiving we're forced to have turkey. I'm like, when we had ribs last year, what a year that was. Like that was a great
Yeah.
year. I'm like, oh great. I can eat food that I want to eat. Like turkey, I don't hate turkey, but it's just like you mentioned, like nobody knows how to cook it right. And so oftentimes the turkey's dry and it's just like not ideal. And I just feel like there's other like we shouldn't have to be pigeonholed into turkey every year. Just
Yeah.
because society says so.
Yeah, and I got a boneless turkey, like a boneless butterball. So took it out the day before and marinated it overnight to avoid that. And then I cooked it in a bunch of butter, um, rubbed it with gochujang on it, and then you get all your seasonings on it the night before. And then when you bake it, it was like this much liquid, and the turkey was just over it, so it doesn't get too dry at all.
Beautiful. Yeah. So sounds like Thanksgiving's at Marcus's house moving forward. But football ensued, Thanksgiving football. We had three great primetime games, and then we also had the Bears and Lions game, which was also great as well. But before we preview all these games, recap everybody, get them up to speed, we do have our famous worst and best top fives according to the Brickyard. Whether we want to start with a glass half full or a glass half empty, the best and the worst according to the Brickyard.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. We're coming out of Thanksgiving, so we'll kind of keep the thankfulness going, and then there will be a lot of tough conversations that we're going to have about some of these teams. So we'll ease into it with the good, then we'll go over the bad. So this week for the top five teams, notable teams that are not going to be there, Buffalo Bills, sorry. You're not in the top five this week. I just can't do it. Just can't put you there. The Lions and the Chiefs have found themselves on the outside looking in, and they may not even crawl back into the top five, and both those teams should be on panic alert. But at number five, we have a team that seemingly will only do what needs to be done and the bare minimum that needs to be done, even if it is in overtime. The Denver Broncos are one of the weirdest teams that have ever been at 10-2 that I have ever seen in my life. You want to look at this Broncos team, go up against the Commanders off your bye in Washington. Both those teams kind of had a break, and then it goes to overtime. This is a team that you don't just dominate from front to back, and it's kind of just been the story of the Denver Broncos all season, where it seems like Bo Nix only can score when he has to. At this point, I don't know if that's just Sean Payton holding back a little bit, or I don't know if that's just one of these teams where they're always going to be in a one-score game here. So at number five, we have the Denver Broncos. I can't put you higher on this list, but you're also tied for the number one seed, and you have a top five defense in the NFL. And Bo Nix has been clutch, and he's made some pretty spectacular throws, especially the one that he had while he was falling down. So at number five, still have to put Denver there. At number four, this team will make you want to take your shirt off in the locker room and run through a brick wall. As soon as I start saying his name three times again, Cole Kmet, Cole Kmet, Cole Kmet. You have the Chicago Bears step up, and they're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles on Black Friday. And who shows up other than Cole Kmet? You have Colston Loveland balling out in this game. Caleb Williams, believe it or not, only has 6 turnovers this year. And I said earlier that Caleb Williams just needs to not be awful for this team to win. Well, he hasn't been terrible as far as turnovers. I'm more just concerned where is he just going to have the big plays downfield? Is he going to have the clutch plays? And as the season has gone on, it seems like he has gotten more comfortable. This team likes their head coach, and I like a head coach that's young, energetic, smart, and he's also jacked. He's not one of these guys on the sideline who looks like he just sits at his desk, studies films all day. He's actually a guy who looks like he's in shape, looks like he's actually in the gym with the players lifting. So I love that about the Bears. And did you know that they have 3 players in the top 5 for interceptions so far this year? You have so far this season for the Chicago Bears, Kevin Byard is number 1 with 6 interceptions. And then you have Nashawn Wright with 5 interceptions, tied for number 2 with Ernest Jones and JC Horn. And then Tremaine Edmonds also has 4 interceptions so far. So not only do you have Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet stepping up, you have Monungai playing a big role, you have Adunze coming along, and then you're finally, DJ Moore, you activated him in November, which is the scariest time of the year to do. You have 3 guys in the top 5 as far as interceptions. If that's not a winning recipe, I don't know what is at this point in the NFL. So at number 4, we have the Chicago Bears. At number 3, we have the Rams. The Rams have been number 1 for the past few weeks, but I have to be honest, when you go to Carolina and you have such a close bad loss, I do have to take you down a few pegs. I do have to pull you down this list a little bit. So you're still at number 3 because it was a competitive game, kind of a fluky game in the first half for Matthew Stafford, where he throws a pick 6, and that ends up being the difference in this game. But you went to Carolina, lost to a tough team, but overall, still believe in this team's offense. You have Puka Nacua, who's number 3 in receiving so far this year. Devontae Adams looks rejuvenated. Him and Matthew Stafford are honestly playing some of the best football of their career this year, especially for 2 players who are veterans in your defense. I still do believe in, so should you panic about this loss? I don't think so. It's kind of just one of those weird fluky games in Carolina, and they've also been a fluky team, so you don't really know what to prepare for when you're playing them. So at number 3, still have the Rams off a loss. At number 2, I have 2 teams because they both start with T on here. So at number 2, I have the Houston Texans, who are now reasserting themselves as one of the best teams in the AFC. You have one of the best defenses in the league. You went out there, you held the Colts to not 1, not 2, but 16 points. And then you go out there, CJ Stroud comes back this year, and you actually have players like Woody Marks who are stepping up. You have Higgins, who's playing well for you. Nico Collins is getting back to his old self. And this team overall is just starting to pull all of it together at the right time. And they look like one of the scariest teams to play in the AFC. So I have the Texans tied at number 2 with the Toyota-thon Packers. That's right. A lot of people wrote this team off, but Bill Belichick said the season doesn't start until Thanksgiving. And for some reason, Jordan Love heard that and he's like, oh, so I don't have to play until November. And then what does he do? He goes out there, throws 4 touchdowns, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns of those went to Dontavian Wicks, who suddenly also decided to wake up during Toyotathon because apparently he falls in that bracket too of not showing up until Thanksgiving. And then also, Jordan Love doesn't get sacked in this game. Going up against a Detroit Lions defense where Aiden Hutchinson was on a streak for having a sack in consecutive games. You have Anzalone, you have good players like Jack Campbell on that defense, and they weren't able to get to Jordan Love, and you're kind of pushing the Packers down now, controlling your destiny in the playoffs. So overall, the Toyota-thon Packers, I don't know. There's something weird going on, but it's definitely something there because suddenly Jordan Love is going 4 touchdowns to no turnovers. And then at number 1, because this team is on a 10-game win streak and they actually do look dominant, and they are the archetype New England Patriots team. We have the Patriots, and you see Drake May? Some of those throws on Monday Night Football where they drop 30 points on the Giants in the first half, 30-7 at halftime, and then they do it all for Tommy DeVito, who was cut from the New Jersey Giants, and he's Tommy DeVito. He should be Italian royalty in New Jersey. And then you send him away to New England to the Patriots. What are you thinking, man? And then his team has an inspired game where they were going out for blood. They were hitting Jackson Dart right as he was going out of bounds. And then they also had that massive hit on the kickoff return. The Giants literally forgot how to kick extra points in this game as well. And the Patriots now go into their bye on a 10-game win streak here, and they'll be able to nurse some of those injuries, whether it's Milton Williams on their defense, whether it is Ramondre Stevenson getting 100% right, or just Drake May being energetic and ready to go for the last stretch of the season here. So at number 1, it's New England.
We love it. You really threw me. I'm not going to lie. You threw me with the 2 T's for the number 2 spot. I was looking all the way down this list. I'm like, no way he shouts out the Titans. No way. I think that's the only other T team on here. I'm like, what is this guy tweaking about? But Texans there, definitely agree. They're going to jump the Colts. I've already said the Colts are going to miss the playoffs. So I like this list a lot. Patriots, at this point, I get that they've had an easy schedule, but they've beat everybody in front of them. And with those teams like the Giants, they're taking care of business and they're dominating front to back. That game felt personal. They said, give us back those 2 Super Bowl rings. Disgraceful. But I agree with this list here. Now, let's talk about the worst of the worst. We just talked about what we're thankful for. And now let's talk about what we're not thankful for, which is these teams on this list. No honorable mentions this week, just business here. So let's start at number 5. Actually bad teams. Teams that you look at them, you're like, this isn't fair. I'm not going to kick a dog while it's down. So those teams for me are the Titans and the Saints. You leave them alone. Be nice to them. They are a very bad team with not a lot of upside. They both have one of the highest points against in all of the league. Worst point differential. They're the worst. So actually bad teams. So let's put them at number 5. But a team that doesn't classify for that because who are clearly rebuilding, and that's why they're as bad as they are, compared to a team like the Raiders. The Raiders, they deserve to be number 4 because they are a bad team that has tried their best to be at least somewhat competitive. And so far, they are not. You have Max Crosby, but yet that defense is awful. Then the offense, you draft Brock Bowers, who's great. You draft Ashton Genty, who was almost the Heisman last year, and he's just terrible behind that offensive line. And you trade for Geno Smith, and Geno Smith has been terrible for you all year, leading the league in interceptions, competing with Tua for the worst quarterback in the league. Raiders, not only that, I don't have to get into the Pete Carroll and the Chip Kelly stuff. I've already talked about it. Old ageism. Sorry, the Brickyard hates old people. You heard it here first. At number 4, we have the Raiders. Now, number 3, what's worse than being a bad team? Being a bad team that starts to play good. And therefore, at number 3, we have teams that are bad at being bad. Give me the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. And I'm sure there's more teams I'm forgetting about. Once we get out of the playoff picture, stop winning football games. Just stop. The Jets, you were in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall pick, whoever that may have been. And then for the Dolphins, same position. You guys were playing so bad. But now you guys are going to finish like 7-10, and your record's going to look a little bit better. Maybe Mike McDaniels gets another job somewhere. But like at this point, your team is so bad, you guys should just keep losing at this point. Instead, the Dolphins have won 3 straight, and the Jets have won 3 of the last 4 games. So stop winning is what my message is there for the bad tanking teams. And then for number 2, I'm just going to put the entire AFC North at this point. I think that's fair. The Browns, self-explanatory. I mean, sorry, I know I'm wearing a Myles Garrett jersey, and Myles Garrett is excellent, but the Browns, for obvious reasons, don't even have to get into that. The Bengals, for how bad they played to start the season, I understand Joe Burrow went down, but there was points in that where their offense was just awful. You have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Chase Brown for a while was averaging 1 yard a carry for them to start it. Now they're on a tear. Joe Burrow's back, and maybe they still make that playoff push. But winner of this division is going to be 9-8, most likely. Then the Steelers have been a complete dysfunctional mess all year. Mike Tomlin firing chants across the last Steelers game. And then the Ravens, who are a team that is 6-6 and is almost the epitome of average at this point, with their plus minus being just under 0 at this point. Sorry, Flowers Pod, if you're in this live right now, I apologize. The AFC North is maybe the worst division in the NFL, and this team is probably going to be a first-round exit, most likely. Shout out NFC South. You deserve a shout, too. But at number 1, let's talk about a team that had everything they needed. They had a good defense. They have arguably the best wide receiver of their generation, They have a great coach. They have a good GM, good ownership. And they said, Sam Darnold, we're good, bro. We got JJ McCarthy. Yeah, we got 9. And not only that, you still also had Daniel Jones. And I've been very critical of Daniel Jones this year, but combined, they are 38 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Daniel Jones is 5th in passing, and Sam Darnold is 7th, respectively. Both teams of which are 8-4 or better. So, what do we have with the Vikings? What do we have? We have 2 quarterbacks that played for them, JJ McCarthy and Max Bromer. Shout out UNH. And what do? They both have a QBR under 39.8. What does that mean? That means that if they spiked it into the ground every single play, they would have a better QBR than JJ McCarthy and Max Brosmer. So the Vikings, part of this worst top 5 are teams that are bad at being bad, some teams that are good at being bad, and then teams like the Vikings who just make bad decisions. And JJ McCarthy is a monumental bust for them. Move on. Therefore, Vikings have to be at number 1 for that abysmal performance that we saw this past weekend. Vikings, for now, at number 1.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're one of the most expensive teams in the NFL at this point. I mean, you're top 5 as far as salary cap, and then it really is one of those situations where if you don't get the quarterback right, it can really destroy your whole team. And this was a team that could do it okay with Sam Darnold, and it was a team in win now mode. And this team was kind of always in this team has been in an identity crisis, I feel like, for the past decade and a half, and they've kind of been the NFC version of the Chargers, where sometimes Chargers will be really pretty good, and then sometimes the Chargers will be really bad, but they're generally always not the worst team in the NFL, but they're generally never the best team in the NFL, and you've done it with makeshift teams, whether it was the Sam Bradford era, whether it was trying to bring in Josh Freeman, whether it was having Case Keenum there for you, whether it was almost beating the Legion of Boom in their peak with Teddy Bridgewater, but you missed one of the easiest field goals in NFL history. That's kind of your
Yep.
team right now, whether it was you losing to Nick Foles versus the Philadelphia Eagles, whether it was Teddy Bridgewater almost losing his leg when you had him, and now you have Sam Darnold last year, and you have one of the best seasons, and then you flame out versus the Rams. Like, this team has always kind of been the Chargers, and they've always been in an identity crisis. You had the Kirk Cousins era, and Kirk Cousins was good enough where at one point he was 18 picks to 2 interceptions. You make it to the playoffs with a negative point differential, and who do you lose to? Daniel Jones and the Giants, and Kirk Cousins doesn't even get the ball past the first down marker on 4th down, and then the Giants go out there and proceed to have one of the worst playoff losses I've frankly ever seen in my life versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was the year they made it to the Super Bowl the first time. So this team has always had the talent. It's always been good enough, especially in the Mike Zimmer era, but they've never, ever, ever gotten the quarterback right. And the closest thing they had to that was Brett Favre when he was committing insurance fraud.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Like, I look at the Vikings' history. I look at a team that is similar to the Chargers in the sense that a lot of heartbreak. They've had a lot of really good teams, like you mentioned, the Case Keenum team that was just 4 quarters away from a Super Bowl. The Brett Favre, which almost beat the Bounty Gate Saints to go to the Super Bowl. And then other than that, what you're always consistent with is they always have amazing wide receivers. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, Chris Carter, Randy Moss. But they just can never get over the hump. There's always something. There's always somebody in that division that's doing better. For the Chargers, it's the Broncos and Chiefs. For the Vikings, it's the Packers historically. It just, at this point, their quarterback is a nightmare. I feel like their solution is going to be Kyler Murray, most likely.
Josh Allen. Josh Allen, go to Minnesota next year. Minnesota, give up the house for Josh Allen. I mean, you don't think Josh Allen would want to go play with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, actually have a real offensive coach? I mean, we talked about a couple of, I guess, the sexier options, which is definitely being in California, like LA or San Francisco with McVay. But if you can get involved with either Kevin O'Connell, and you don't mind being in the Midwest or with the Indianapolis Colts, if they flame out this year and one of those teams give you a generational offer for Josh Allen, if I'm Josh Allen, and say, yeah, please trade me because we're never going to get it done with McDermott and this franchise is cursed. So let me just walk to Minnesota, please.
To play for another cursed franchise. I
Yeah.
I can see it. I mean, on the Vikings, I mean, it's not their problem. Their defense isn't the problem. Brian Flores' defense has been good for them. They have the weapons there. They have a relatively decent running game, or at least they've been good at drafting running backs historically. So I like it. Ultimately, if I'm the Vikings, I make that call. And if I'm the Bills, a team that clearly may need to go into rebuild, I think it's worth an offer.
Yeah, and also if I'm Justin Jefferson and they're thinking of bringing back JJ McCarthy next year and you don't have the quarterback situation figured out, I want to leave next year because you can't expect me to waste the prime of my career playing with terrible quarterbacks. I get DeAndre Hopkins was pretty good with Matt Schaub, but like JJ McCarthy can't even get Justin Jefferson the ball and he's throwing for 87 yards and he's doing Justin Fields types of things except he doesn't have the athletic ability.
Yeah, it's just, and it sucks because Justin Jefferson, who has been arguably the best receiver through his first 6 years of any wide receiver ever, and it's going to be ruined because of JJ McCarthy. He might not even have 1,000 yards, even though he's played pretty much every game this year. This past week, he had 2 catches for 4 yards. That's just inexcusable for someone like Justin Jefferson.
But yeah, definitely a worthy top one team. I didn't expect that historical knowledge to come out on the Minnesota Vikings, but that's what you get from the show. We break down the past decade of what a team has been struggling with in their identity crisis. But let's go ahead and stay in the NFC North because on Thanksgiving, we had a contentious game kind of to determine the future. And this is now the first time since 2020 that the Green Bay Packers have beat the Detroit Lions twice in a season. So essentially, since Dan Campbell has taken over. And now, I mean, say what you will about Jordan Love and the Packers, but suddenly it's Toyota-thon. Suddenly it's Thanksgiving when the Matt LaFleur era typically begins. And Jordan Love goes out, throws for 4 touchdowns. Dontavian Wicks is averaging 15 yards per catch. You get Josh Jacobs back, and then Christian Watson looks like an absolute beast. And that seems like Jordan Love's favorite target so far, along with Wicks. And then he has Romeo Doubs, who's been in and out of the lineup. But do you think this is about the Packers stepping up, or do you think the Lions are in a real identity crisis right now? Especially you see Amon-Ra St. Brown go down. Seems like they just don't have the same spirit that they had the past few years.
I think it's a mixture of both. Like, I do think the Packers are a good team. I do have my doubts about them, just how they've played to this point. But the Lions, for me, I look at this team on paper. Like this past week, Jared Goff played a fairly good game. Jahmyr Gibbs had some decent runs in that game. But losing Amon-Ra, a guy who's kind of a focal point of that offense, that hurts. And then there is just something missing about this Lions team. Like in years past, it looks like this team was going to run through a wall for any opponent, and especially coming off of a loss. But now it feels like this is a good team, but maybe they don't have that same grit that they had the last 2 or 3 years. So I definitely think this is more on the Lions than the Packers. And it's sad to see because I really like this Lions team and I'd like to see them succeed, but I just don't think it's their year.
Yeah, and then I think like the biggest issue is they have had winnable games that I think just going for it on fourth down instead of kicking the field goal could have saved them. Like I think you could have beat the Philadelphia Eagles if you just settled for the field goal. I think you could have beat the Packers if you just settled for a couple of field goals. And then it seems like just possession wise, you're getting behind because, all right, we're down 10 points. So you want to go out there and get a touchdown, but let's just keep it a one score game. So unless you're down by like 14 points, you're down by 21 points. How about we go ahead and just kick the field goal and take the points? And it's like Dan Campbell keeps trying to push the going for it on fourth down. And I think teams are just better prepared for that from the Detroit Lions, where maybe you do take a step back because you lost Ben Johnson, but you still have the talent, so it shouldn't be an excuse. But teams are just better prepared and they're mentally ready for a team like the Lions team like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Rams to just go for it on fourth down. So you're already calling a defense for 4 downs instead of 3 downs, which I think like the past 2 years, it took the NFL a little bit of time to catch up. But I do think like defensively, we have seen a lot of coordinators and defenses catch up, whether it's just like stopping mobile quarterbacks in general or stopping teams on fourth down.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely shot them in the foot. I think the Eagles game's a prime example of that. Hell, even the Vikings game a few weeks back, that hurt them. But right now, like if we go out, we look at September as a year, that's kind of the month that some of the pretenders kind of flourish the most. Since they started off 4-1, they've essentially gone week for week, win and loss at this point. The Chiefs game, all right, that's the Chiefs, understandable. Then they beat the Vikings. They lose to the Vikings close, which they probably should have won that game. Commanders, they blow out. And then it's been a very inconsistent Lions team. For a team that you consistently can say in the Dan Campbell era has been prepared for every game, running through that wall, and ultimately, putting pedal to the metal. But it seems like at this point, I just don't think they have that same flair that they had when Ben Johnson was there.
Yeah, and I think they still can make the playoffs, but they're definitely making it a lot harder than it needs to be. Because I think you should have won at least 2 out of the last 3 games that you've lost if you just settled for the field goal there. And then the Packers, I don't know. The rematch or when they match up with the Bears, that'll be a true test for both teams. I think that'll be an electric battle.
Absolutely. Speaking of NFC teams, Cowboys riding high since the deadline. They beat the Chiefs. Chiefs feel like to be dead out of the water in the playoff race at this point. And don't look now, but the Cowboys have won 3 straight games. Their defense looks a lot better. Quinnen Williams has been a great addition for them. Logan Wilson has been great for them. And then, most importantly, as we've mentioned all season, the pairing of George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb has been electric for them. Jake Ferguson's been a top tight end for them. And Javonte Williams, talk about a guy that was relinquished from the Broncos. He comes to Jerry World, and he's been super successful. Don't look now, but the Cowboys may make the playoffs. And I think they could potentially win their division at this point, especially with what I've seen from the Eagles the last month. I think we could be sniffing a potential Cowboys NFC East title.
Yeah, and this is what you kind of want to see from a team with the new head coach, where it's fine if you struggle out of the gate for the first couple months. We get that. We're getting used to new systems here, especially with Matt LaFleur. And then you get some nice pickups on the side, whether it's Logan Wilson, and then you have CeeDee Lamb go out for a few weeks. And now Dak Prescott establishes that rapport with George Pickens. Ferguson has become a touchdown monster here. And now you look at it, and suddenly you look up, and George Pickens is the number 2 receiver in the NFL, and he's 200 yards behind Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's already having a historic season. But he's still 100 yards ahead of Puka Nacua, who's the next closest receiver. I get Nacua missed a couple games, but he's also playing on the same team with CeeDee Lamb, where they're both 1A. So you have 2 players who are capable of being a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. George Pickens has looked like at one point the best receiver in the NFL so far this season, whether it's just his athletic ability, jumping over people in this game, just the catches on double teams. So he's looked unstoppable. And now the Cowboys, they're definitely a team that could make some noise, and they perform the best when they have low expectations. And I kind of just like the vibe in the locker room, where it actually seems like they're buying into their head coach this year. Seems like Dak Prescott has gotten a little bit more comfortable, but I would just be careful with the Cowboys, because it seems like anytime expectations are low, they perform well. And as soon as they start picking up a little bit of steam, that's when typically the franchise will start to flame out a little bit. But they are capable of making the playoffs.
They are definitely capable. I will say the Lions game on Thursday night is a very important matchup, obviously, for both teams. But following that, they have the Vikings, a Chargers team that's banged up, a Commanders team that's out of the mix, and the Giants that are out of the mix as well. So I do think if they can beat the Lions, I think they have a chance to jump the Eagles and win that division. And especially given the history of the NFC East with not having a repeat champion over the last 25 years at this point, that I think it's possible the Cowboys win that division. And honestly, I don't normally like the Cowboys historically, but I do like this Cowboys team. I think George Pickens was an absolute home run hit. I liked it when they traded for him the first time. And then I like Javonte Williams a lot. I felt like out of college, out of UNC, he was really good. Didn't really pan out in Denver, but he's been excellent for them this year. And then Dak Prescott's been playing really good football. So Cowboys, I think they're a scary team right now. A team that, if they beat the Lions, I'm fully on board that they'll make the playoffs and win that division.
Yeah, and then for the Chiefs this year, you haven't played very well on the road, have you? You only won one road game so far this year, and then if the Chiefs miss the playoffs, which it is looking very likely that they will. Can we put Patrick Mahomes out of the GOAT season? I mean, Tom Brady, say what you will about him. Would he miss the playoffs with Travis Kelsey and Rasheed Rice? And I get they don't have the best run game in the world, but their defense still has played well in spots. It hasn't been as dominant as it has been in the past, but it seems like Patrick Mahomes is like consistently turning the ball over at some point during the game, and it's typically not an opportune time. It's been on the other side of the field. It's been in the red zone where Mahomes is having bad turnovers, and now it just hasn't been like the same Chiefs team that we've seen in the past. And now it's looking like when the Vikings went out and won a bunch of one possessions games, and then the next year they went out there and they lost all of those games, and now the Chiefs have only won one possession game so far this season. Now against the Cowboys, they go out there and lose. They've lost to the Buffalo Bills. The Broncos have beat them this year. So anytime they've gone up against tough competition, not coming out on top. And now we might see a year where we won't have Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs in his prime, seemingly with no injury to him. And the only thing that happened was Rasheed Rice missed a couple games, but he's also been balling out so far this year. So this is going to be insane to see. Like, I mean, Mahomes missing the playoffs in his prime, and people were putting him in the GOAT conversation when Tom Brady's already beat him twice in the playoffs. Like, I think that door is closed if you miss the playoffs this year, unless you win 8 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brady never played a game that he was eliminated from playoff contention. And I think at this point, we're going to see that with the Chiefs. If you miss the playoffs, you still have your head coach. You're not that far removed from winning back to back Super Bowls, and your team is fairly the same at this point. I understand that your division's a little bit tougher because the Broncos have been really good, and so have the Chargers. But ultimately, like, there's no excuse why this team is 6-6. I understand, like you mentioned, Rasheed Rice has been inconsistent, and their run game hasn't been great. But the run game hasn't been good really the last 5 years at this point. So it's not like that's a good excuse either. Your defense is still top notch. And then I look at Mahomes' numbers. He's third in passing, fifth in touchdowns. Like, his numbers stand out, and they've been good there. So what is the excuse for the Chiefs at this point? I think we could potentially be seeing a playoffs in the AFC where we potentially don't see Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen in the playoffs at all if the seeding goes as according at this point. We might not see three of the biggest superstars in the AFC in the playoffs this year, which I think on one side would be good for the AFC, and the other side of it, for ratings wise, I'm sure that's not going to be great for the NFL.
Yeah, and do you think this is kind of the NFL trying to beat the allegations, though, where there has been so much talk about the Chiefs missing the Chiefs just getting favorable calls from the refs. A bunch of people like making memes about the refs being a part of the Chiefs teams. Even Chat GPT and Grok came out and said that the refs are slanted toward the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think this is just one of those situations where they've had so much outcry about the Kansas City Chiefs that they're like, all right, we're not gonna put you in the playoffs with the referees. We're not going to help you this year. Also, you just went to the Super Bowl and got blown out by the Philadelphia Eagles. So I don't think that the NFL really has an incentive to want to help the Chiefs make the playoffs to begin with, because you got embarrassed and it wasn't a competitive Super Bowl at all. And that's happened multiple times now in Patrick Mahomes' career where he's gotten blown out in the Super Bowl. So I think the NFL is looking at the product like, we kind of do need another team in the AFC to make the Super Bowl, because last time you guys made the Super Bowl with the exact same team outside of Rasheed Rice, you got your ass kicked.
Yeah, I agree. I think because it's not only that, like every single, comedian, I feel like pop culture, even people who don't watch football are starting to see that the Chiefs get all the calls. And there's been a bunch of montages, a bunch of edits that come out about it. So I think the NFL of any sport is probably the most ahead of the curb, and I feel like they hear the feedback of the fans the most out of any of the four sports. So I absolutely think that they hear the noise and they're like, okay, I think it's better if the Chiefs don't make the playoffs. Those allegations go away. The GOAT conversation with Mahomes is probably gone at this point. And I think it's better for the NFL that way if it goes that way. The Chiefs don't make the playoffs. There's a new champion in the AFC potentially. Maybe it's Josh Allen's turn finally. Maybe it's Lamar's if he makes the playoffs. And maybe it's Joe Burrow if he makes a run. But at this point, Mahomes not making the playoffs, it makes the AFC so much more interesting, I think.
Yeah, it makes the AFC more interesting. It makes the NFL more interesting. And then also, I get Brady also lost 2 Super Bowls, but the Giants Super Bowls were those not iconic Super Bowls that came down to the last play instead of the Chiefs getting dog walked by Tampa Bay and then getting run out of the stadium by Philadelphia. Like it's not like when the Patriots lost, it was a huge blowout game, but when the Chiefs lose, it's unwatchable. Like
Yeah.
people who are casual football fans are like, even if they don't care enough about the other team like blowing them out, they're like, oh, this is kind of a boring game where other team kind of just destroyed them and Patrick Mahomes was running around for his life.
You can argue that all of the Patriots Super Bowls were top 15 Super Bowls of all time. If we ranked all of them, I think
Outside of
of
the
those
Rams
10 yeah,
with
outside of that
Goff.
one Rams Super Bowl, I would say that majority of those Super Bowls, whether it's the Seahawks Super Bowl, both of the Rams, well, the first Rams Super Bowl, the Panther, all of them have come down to the last kick or the last play. The David Tyree, we had the Giants Super Bowl, the second one that was really great, the Eagles Super Bowl, which was great. Obviously, the Falcons one's maybe the best one, but they've all been great. Meanwhile, the Bucks Super Bowl, they got worked because their entire offensive line got hurt, and then the Eagles game, which was hideous from start to finish. So ultimately, if we're going to also criticize Peyton Manning for what his Super Bowl was against the Legion of Boom, we can criticize Mahomes too with what we've seen there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Definitely over the moon about that Thursday night football game. And then we pivot to last week's Thursday night football, which was the Ravens and Bengals. This was a game we were split on. I picked the Cincinnati Bengals to win this game because I've not been impressed with the Baltimore Ravens offense. I don't think Lamar has been looking right. He's taken a lot of big hits, and it seemed like they just were at the point where they had to bring Lamar Jackson back, where they're like, okay, we just beat the Chicago Bears, who have been playing well. We think we can go out there if we get Lamar back and potentially win the division. And now, Cincinnati, say what you will. I saw a comment of someone saying we're now putting 3 and 8 teams in the playoff hunt. Absolutely, when they're in the AFC North, which is a top 5 worst division as a whole in the NFL. They're like the entire spot for a worst team went to the AFC North, and now the Cincinnati Bengals get Joe Burrow back. And say what you will, they've been competitive in certain games, and their defense came up with some stops. The Ravens turned it over 5 times, which I believe is the most times the Bengals have turned over a team so far this year. Joe Burrow comes back. You put up 32 points. You have a competitive game with Joe Flacco against the Patriots, who are on a 10-game win streak here. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Cincinnati Bengals go out there and win the division. Because, like, do you like what you see from the Ravens? Do you like what you see from the Steelers? And the NFL is looking for just that random team to make the playoffs. So I think if Joe Burrow ends up making the playoffs, then we get Joe Burrow and Josh Allen potentially, or Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence in the first round. Then the Bengals, like, hey, why not us this year? Because we have Jamar Chase, we have T. Higgins, we have a solid tight end group. We have Chase Brown, who's been playing well. We have Yoshiba. Like, why can't we just put up points and potentially find our way into a divisional round or AFC championship game? You're only 2 games back from the Ravens, and you already beat them once. You get them again.
Yeah, I'm on board with it for a few reasons. For one, since the Steelers started 4-1, they're 2-5 since. So they're clearly not the same team. They got annihilated by the Bills. And then I look at the rest of their schedule. They face the Ravens again, which could very well be the nail in the coffin. You also face the Lions and the Ravens a second time. So that's going to be a bloodbath. And then on the Ravens side, outside of the games I mentioned, they face the Bengals again soon, and they're going to be out for blood. Then you have the Patriots that you have to face, who are the hottest team in football. The Packers post Toyotathon. Wouldn't want to face the Packers if I were them. So we see losses there. Meanwhile, I go to the Bengals, and they
They
have the
play the
Dolphins on their
Patriots off a
schedule.
bye for context, right? Just for our viewers.
Yeah, they placed the yeah, exactly. They faced them off of a bye, so that's not going to be pretty. And then I look at the Bengals, and I see at least 3 more wins here because you have the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and Browns to end it. So if you beat Buffalo and potentially the Ravens, we're looking at a team that's going to run the table, and they potentially could make the playoffs at 8 and 9, especially with how the Steelers are playing.
Yeah, and I think they can do it, and I think they can make the playoffs at 8 and 9 because I don't believe in the Steelers. They've kind of just gotten worse and worse. I mean, I've been kind of one of the earliest people raising the alarm on DK Metcalf, and there was a reason why the Seattle Seahawks traded him away to Pittsburgh, but the guy has not been clutch down the stretch. He has not made big catches, and he has not made big plays when the Pittsburgh Steelers have needed it. And then I don't know what to make of Aaron Rodgers this year. And then your defense hasn't played well either. And this is a Arthur Smith led offense. You don't actually have a real run game either. So like let's just be realistic about the Steelers. The only highlight with this team is their tight ends. Okay, you have 3 really good tight ends. Congratulations. What else can you do for me? Oh, your offensive line is below average. Your run game is below average. Your defense is below average. Your quarterback is middling
Average.
to average. Your coach is slightly above average at this point. Like, I don't know. We predicted before the year that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the one that ruins Mike Tomlin's winning record, and that could very well come to fruition. I picked them to go 8-1, but I think 7-10 or 8-9 is definitely possible.
Yeah, and it's going to be hilarious because this is how it's going to play out. Aaron Rodgers is going to retire and go off into the sunset, be a first ballot Hall of Famer, top 5 quarterback of all time. Mike Tomlin's going to get fired because if the Steelers fans are shouting "Fire Mike Tomlin," I think it's going to be that's not a good sign for Pittsburgh or Mike Tomlin. He's going to get fired. And then I want to touch on DK Metcalf because I want you to guess how many yards a game DK Metcalf is averaging. At this point, he's not even going to reach 1,000 yards. And to me, that is the biggest mystery of the NFL. The fact that DK Metcalf is like 1% body fat, the fact that he runs a 4.3, the fact that he's a physical specimen, unlike any player coming out of the draft that I've ever seen. And yet he's on pace for 900 yards at this point, and you're DK Metcalf, and you have Aaron Rodgers. You've only had 3,000-yard seasons in your 7-year career. You disappear for stretches throughout the game. I look at his game log. There's games where he has 1 catch. Like, what is going on with DK Metcalf? And then the defense has been awful, which is usually what the Steelers' strength is. Their defense has been terrible. So I think it's absolutely in the picture. Like I mentioned with their schedule does not get any easier, especially when you have Baltimore this upcoming week. And then you face Detroit, who's going to be hungry for a playoff spot, and then the Ravens to end it. Like, I think we see the losing streak finally start for the Steelers.
Yeah, and it's like the worst part of it is, and the reason why they deserve the losing streak this year is we both have watched TJ Watt get drafted by the Steelers, and we've watched his career play out. He passes his brother JJ Watt in sacks this season, and it seems like unfortunately he's not the same dominant player. He's still a good NFL player, but he's not defensive player of the year caliber anymore. And now you look at him with the Steelers, and it's like you wasted his entire career for what? Like, he made a lot of money. He was proud to be a Steeler, and I respect him for staying there and everything. But like at the end of the day, you ruined a generational talent's career here. Ever since Ben Roethlisberger left, you can't figure it out. You can't win playoff games, and it seems like a lot of people in the Pittsburgh media were like kind of hostile towards um, Ben Roethlisberger, but doesn't seem like he was the problem. Seemed like he had some actual legitimate grievances with that Pittsburgh Steelers organization.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing, like, we've made fun of the Bills before because after they've lose to the Chiefs, they run it back with the same team. What can we say about the Steelers then? Because what have the Steelers done since 2016? They haven't won a playoff game since the first Trump election, since the first Trump year as a president. A lot of things have changed since 2016. Not only that, but since he retired, you've run it with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Aaron Rodgers, and I know I'm Mitch Trubisky. The list
Russell
goes on.
Wilson,
Russell Wilson, and I know I'm
Mason
forgetting
Rudolph.
more. Yes, like the Steelers have tried the same thing over and over again to no avail. The one thing I know that the Steelers can do well is draft receivers that are batshit crazy but damn good at football and usually have a good defense. But they don't even have that this year. The crumbling castle that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're seeing before our very eyes. The fall of Rome and the infamous never had a losing streak can finally end. So, where the Brickyard was right, the Steelers are going to have a losing season. And secondly, yeah, them affecting TJ Watt's career the way they have, the fact that he's not going to be able to hoist a Super Bowl, something that he could have over JJ Watt, is just disgraceful, honestly. But yeah, the
Yeah.
Steelers are insane, and I want to see them lose.
And then for the Bills, why didn't you score more? Is my only question. But 26-7, not really much to say about the Bills. We kind of just expect them to win these games. A game people didn't pick a lot for this team to win. Team that was kind of an upset where we picked it. I said, you know what? I see a pattern brewing where whenever the Philadelphia Eagles lose a game, they seem to lose another one after that. And I get it only happened one time this season, but I'm like, I think it's going to happen again. I think it's going to happen versus the Chicago Bears because overall, I just like where the Bears are at better than the Philadelphia Eagles. We both picked the Chicago Bears in the upset here, and now we are sitting in a situation where in the same draft last year, we had Caleb Williams taken, we had Drake May taken, and now they are sitting on top of their respective conferences. And you talk about the NFL looking for new storylines with the Chiefs getting blown out last year. Jalen Hurts not really being that guy where not a lot of people embrace him or will ever embrace him as the face of the league. NFL's looking for a new legitimate rivalry. Well, they may have found it in potentially Caleb Williams and Drake May here. The Josh Allen thing was not a rivalry. Joe Burrow can't stay healthy enough to have a rivalry with Patrick Mahomes. And now they're looking around. Well, who's it going to be? Now it looks like it could be Caleb Williams and Drake May. And for the Bears in this game, your defense plays outstanding. You now have 3 players. I mentioned it in the top 5, but I'll mention it again. Top 5 in interceptions so far this year. That is incredible. So you're turning the ball over a lot. And then Caleb Williams just has done enough where he's not really messing it up. He's made big plays when he needs to. And now you have Kai Manungai rush for 22 times, 5.9 yards a carry for 130 yards. Okay, that's great. But then D Swift comes in, rushes 18 times for 125 yards, and has a perfect yards per carry. You want to know what it is? 6.9. What a average yard per carry for D Swift in this game. You also have Caleb Williams who can move a little bit. Then you don't even have a receiver break 40 yards in this game, and you walk the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is a team that can win in a lot of different ways, and they don't need Caleb Williams to do too much, which is a blessing for your quarterback. Now you have Cole Kmet come back.
Cole Kmet came back. He got a touchdown in this game. I think we might have froze here, but Cole Kmet, he comes back with a touchdown. My thoughts with the Bears game is that ultimately this team is succeeding with what they're doing on defense. I want to shout out Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator. He's a guy, the stint with the Saints didn't work out to his favor, but as a defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen deserves a shout out. We shout out Kevin Byard, the guy leading the league in interceptions. He has twice as many interceptions this year than he's had the last 4 years combined. A guy that had bounced around since leaving Tennessee. He's been super successful, returning back to his old form. Keep in mind, he's 32 years old and he's doing what he's doing. And then their offense, especially with their run game, like you mentioned, Kyle Monangai, he's been a huge hit. I believe he was a 7th round pick for them, and he's been excellent for them, practically Mr. Irrelevant. And then D Swift, when he needs to step up, he had a revenge game against the Eagles. And then they're just getting it done. Caleb Williams doesn't really need to do too much. And I feel like, especially if Caleb Williams can lock into what he's capable of being, which I think is a top 10 quarterback, then this Bears team, I think, can very well win the Super Bowl within the next 3 to 4 years. If he can end up being the prince that is promised, so far he's been a little inconsistent. But if they can work through that, then I think the Bears could very well win the Super Bowl within the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think the Bears can definitely have a shot to win the Super Bowl there. And, I've said before that Caleb Williams just needs to not be awful. And then someone's like, oh, well, he only has 6 turnovers this year. Like, well, you can't just look at turnovers and say, oh, he hasn't been bad this year. You look at him, and in this game, he was 17 for 36, which let me do the math here. Oh, wait, that's below a 50% completion percentage. He only threw for 154 yards. And you go up against the defending Super Bowl champs, and you still win by 9 points in this game in an upset in Chicago, and your running backs are taking over. So like he just needs to not be awful in a way that messes it up at the end of the game. But with him being 17 for 36, if a team is able to stop the run game, a la Seattle, a la the Rams, potentially it could be a rough stint if you end up making it to the playoffs or into a divisional round with the Chicago Bears, where you could potentially get the number 1 seed and lose immediately. Because if Caleb Williams is going to throw for below 50%, well, if you need to have a big drive at the end of the game, that doesn't give me a ton of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, he's of the 32 ranked quarterbacks, he's one of the lowest completion percentages. He's 58% on the year. Ideally, you want to be above the 64% mark. So he definitely needs a lot of improvement there. And sometimes he misses the easy throws, which is kind of concerning for me. I'm a Caleb Williams supporter. I think he's going to be good eventually. And I think Ben Johnson has made a lot of groundwork on his game than from what we saw last year. He's taking a lot less sacks. But he also needs to take the check down once in a while. Not every play needs to be the massive play. Needs to get the ball out quicker. But with right now, with him completing 50% of his 57% of his throws currently, a lot of improvement for him. But the Bears, like the fact that they're still winning despite some of his struggles, I think speaks to how good that defense is. I'll shout out Dennis Allen one more time. And obviously Ben Johnson kind of taking that locker room, reinvigorating. The Bears look energized each game, and they're not losing the games that the Bears normally lose. Similar to what we saw with Detroit a few years back with Dan Campbell. That's a telltale sign that this Bears team has the juice to maybe make an upset in the playoffs.
Yeah, so hopefully Caleb Williams starts to take that next step. A quarterback that and a team that we can't just put our finger on. You can't really definitively say they are one thing or the other. Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers beat the Rams, who were previously everyone's number 1 ranked team. And then as soon as the media starts to gather around a team after everyone else, after the Brickyard puts this team number 1, 5 weeks later, the media decides, oh, I think the Rams are actually a pretty good team. And immediately what happens? The Carolina Panthers beat them at home. Bryce Young goes 15 for 20, 206 yards, and he throws for 3 touchdowns in this game. And you have Coker go off. You have McMillan with 1 big 43-yard touchdown reception. Chuba Hubbard getting involved in the pass game as well. Him and Dowdle, pretty solid performance, but your defense was able to turn Matthew Stafford over, and you snap his touchdown to interception streak in this game. And then this was a game that was back and forth, and it seemed like the Rams were taking control at the end of it, and the Panthers refused to go away. And say what you will about them, seems like every other week they show up, they have a good week, they have a really bad week, and this has been one of the most bipolar teams I've ever seen.
Oh, 100%. Wouldn't you know that over the last 6 games, what do you think their record is? Just take a guess.
6-6.
Take a guess. Yeah. 3-3. And guess how the wins have gone? Blown out by Buffalo, beats the Packers, loses to the Saints, beats the Falcons, loses to the Niners in embarrassing fashion, and then they beat the Rams. So God willing, when they face the Saints following their bye, maybe they can break that streak. But ultimately, yeah, the Panthers are the hardest team. I do like this team a lot, and I do like Bryce Young. You want to talk about a guy that had a lot of scrutiny, did not look like the guy whatsoever in Carolina the first 2 years. This year, you can see, you look at the numbers, he's got a better completion rating, he's got more touchdowns, he's turning the ball over less, he's slowly rising. He could be a guy, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but can he be a top 15 quarterback, which I think this year he has been? And I think Bryce Young is an interesting case. If you're patient with the quarterback, you get him the right coach, that I think they honestly, this Panthers team, they might very well win that division, especially with Bucks banged up. Very interesting team. I trust their defense more than ever, especially after what you did to the Rams. Interesting team. I don't believe in them long term, but I like what I've seen from Bryce Young and this Panthers team. I'm going to start to call them the Carolina coin flips at this point.
And like, say what you will about this team. So if they stumble into a division victory because Tampa just can't cross the finish line at the end of the year this season, and this is a team that's performed really well at home. You just went out there, had a great game versus the Rams. What happens if Sam Darnold stumbles into the 5th seed and he has to go to Carolina? He's been a disaster in the playoffs. We can't just expect Sam Darnold to shake all of the demons that he's had. And the Panthers defense has played well. We've seen flukier things before. Like, if you have Sam Darnold and the Panthers coming into the playoffs after losing a game, playing at home, I mean, this has the recipe for another Sam Darnold disaster going to Carolina. And I could definitely see that happening where he turns it over 3 times. They're able to strip him, and then Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard go off because they have a solid run game. They have some pretty solid pieces, and he's starting to get a feel for like Coker, Xavier Leggett. I know he got injured, but him and McMillan have played well. So it's like this team has been pretty good. So you could definitely see him playing some upset ball.
Oh, 100%. Also, with the Panthers, I think they're building something great. And ultimately, if they're a team that's interested in acquiring talent, I would give the Eagles a call and say, hey, we're interested in A.J. Brown. Because you pair them with Tedro McMillan, Xavier Leggett has proven to be a solid receiver in the NFL as well. I'm a Panthers team. I say, hey, I'm interested in A.J. Brown. What if I give you a second-round pick for him? I would do that in a heartbeat. But this
You
Panthers
open up
team,
your checkbook for George Pickens next year.
that
How
too.
much do you want?
That anything. Write a number. We're going to do it. Yeah, I like this Panthers team a lot, and I like Bryce Young, and I hope that he continues to make his strides. I mean, it's inconsistent for him too, because for him, one week he's throwing 50 yards, the other week he's throwing 400. So I don't. This is the hardest team to gauge, maybe in the NFL, outside of the other team that we can talk about next, the Niners. But the Panthers, an enigma of all teams, the Carolina coin flips, we'll call them. But I also want to talk about the Niners because the Niners are a team that they're 9-4, yet they're out of the playoff mix if it ended today. They've won 3 straight games. Their defense, despite everybody getting hurt, has been very consistent. Brock Purdy has not played excellent since he returned, but they just keep winning games. And I know it's the Cleveland Browns, but the fact that they're 9-4 is insane to me.
Yeah, and well, they're 9-4 because of coaching, and that does show how far coaching can go in the NFL. And then Brock Purdy, while he hasn't played great, he's done just enough for this team to win. And this was a game where I thought the Browns maybe had a chance to potentially upset the 49ers just because of how good the Cleveland Browns defense has been all season long. So with all things considered, I think you actually had a pretty good performance against a stout Cleveland Browns defense who really hasn't given up with how bad they've been on offense this year. So the Niners, like, can they make the playoffs? I definitely think so, but I don't think this is a team equipped to win a playoff game. You see these teams that get dragged into the playoffs because of coaching, and then typically it becomes a disaster in the divisional or the wild card round where you see a massive blowout. So I think that's kind of where this team is at right now, just because Christian McCaffrey kind of hasn't been himself. I have been surprised, though, with how spry George Kittle has looked. He's getting a little motion on in the end zone.
Yeah, he's been excellent since he returned. Jawan Jennings, another guy that came from the grave, he's been good since he came back. So, I mean, now that they're fully healthy, this is a team that is a threat, especially for the Seahawks and Rams in that division. For the Browns, they had some opportunities. I mean, it doesn't help when you had not one, not two, not three, 4 fumbles in this game, 3 of which are by your rookie wide receiver. That certainly doesn't help you in the slightest. But Shador Sanders, I was I was okay with what I saw from him. He threw a touchdown in this game. They go for 2 in the second quarter. They get it. Looks like there's a little bit of momentum entering the second half, and then the Niners just take care of business. But any thoughts on Shador Sanders and how he played?
Yeah, is he involved with the mafia at this point? I mean, 149 yards when was it most of the 80% of
150.
the money was on the over for 150 there. Like, is Shador Sanders involved in the mafia? Does the NFL need to investigate Shador Sanders for picking up a little bit of money on the side here in this one? Because like I do like 16 for 25. You don't even have an interception in this game. 93 quarterback rating. So overall, you're pretty good, but that's a little bit suspicious to me. You come 1 yard shy of your over with most of the money on that. Like, okay, part of the mafia
Let's not
now.
also let's not also forget that Cleveland Browns last week against the Raiders, the over-under was 34.5, and they were on the 29-yard line of the Raiders and could have kicked a field goal to go over, and they decided to punt, which was very suspicious also. So the
They
Browns,
punted.
they punted on the 29-yard line. It would have been like a 40-yard field goal, and they punted. That to me is also suspicious. I understand that they had a sizable lead in that game, but between that and what we saw last week, I don't know. I think Vegas and Cleveland are shaking hands right now.
So if we see Shador with a new watch or a new chain this week, I get you're a Nepo baby, but I'm gonna assume it's from the Italian mob. And we have important things going on with the Epstein files, but at least we caught Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier. So Shador next.
Maybe he's next. Out goes Shador. Let's get this bad game out of the way first. Jags and Titans. Jags annihilate the poor Titans. As we mentioned, they're on the worst top 5 just because they are a bad team, but 25-3. I mean, how many yards did the Titans have? 100? They have 100 yards, I think. 188. My bad. Sorry, I'm being cold here. But Cam Ward, 121. He gets sacked like crazy. Their running game is non-existent. There's fumbles. It's just, is it even fair to talk about the Titans at this point?
Not really. I mean, and the Jaguars too, like, good job. You beat the Titans and you did exactly what you needed to. So there's not really much to say there. Jaguars now put themselves in the division lead. That's really the big news in this game is now the Colts aren't even leading their own division anymore. Then they play the Jaguars twice to finish the year. They play the Houston Texans again, who are only another game behind them. They play the 49ers this year. I think they have some other tough games as well. So yeah, not looking good for the Indianapolis Colts. And why don't we actually pivot to that game next? Because it's actually it's a fun game to talk about. The Texans are now 7-5. The Colts dropped to 8-4. Who could have predicted this? I mean, you predicted them to fall out of the playoffs. I only put them in the top 5 once, and I put them at a 3-way tie at number 5 with the Broncos and Seattle Seahawks at one point because I just wanted to see what team was going to do what. And so far, Indianapolis Colts, that Chiefs loss is not looking good at this point where you kind of see the team slowly fading away on the sideline. You are 7-0 when Jonathan Taylor gets a touchdown. You are now 1-4 when he does not score a touchdown at this point for the Indianapolis Colts. And you go up against a tough defense for Daniel Jones, and he just can't get it done. And this is when real football starts. This is when the real NFL teams start to show up and show out. Now, the Houston Texans have won 6 out of their last 7 games there, and you survive CJ Stroud getting injured, and now you have Woody Marks, who's playing well for you. You have your second round wide receiver who's starting to ball out. You have Nico Collins, and he's just been one of the most consistent wide receivers for you in the NFL. And also, you have the best defense. Alshire got hurt in this game and banged up overall, but this is kind of just a victory lap because we never bought into the Colts hype. I never understood people who were buying into it. You want to talk about Daniel Jones? Sure, that's nice, but what happens when you stop Jonathan Taylor? Oh, right. Your offense stalls out and stops working, and Daniel Jones can't get it done, which is why we never bought into this team. And now you're not even leading your division anymore, and you play the Jaguars twice, you play the Texans again, and you just lost in Indianapolis, or was it in Houston? Yeah, in Indy.
This was in Indianapolis. This is their first
Yeah.
home loss of the season. And the Colts, I've been right about this all the time. Ever since that Titans win, I'm like, they have a really tough stretch in the second half. And this is a team that eerily reminds me of that Minnesota team last year. Although I would put Sam Darnold over Daniel Jones any day. But ever since that Steelers game, he threw 3 picks in that game. The following week, he threw 2 picks. No interceptions with the Chiefs and Texans game, but you're also completing 50% of his throws. 14 to 27 in this game. Doesn't make the big throw when it matters. Isn't being as elusive as he was to start the season. And this team is showing that, I mean, maybe they still have a winning record to end the season, but the gauntlet that they're going to go through. They face the Jags twice. And it's going to be a big sign on Sunday if they beat the Jags, what that'll look like. But then they face the Seahawks and the Niners and the Texans another time. And especially with how competitive the AFC is shaping up, they very well aren't going to make the playoffs. And that's not a hot take. If you know ball and you know how the playoffs work, they very well might just lose the next 5 of the next 6 games and miss the playoffs entirely.
Yeah, I could definitely say that. You're definitely not going to win your division at this point. It looks like the Jaguars and Texans, they're both ascending at the right time, and the Jaguars are again figuring it out with another first year head coach with Liam Cohen. Now their offense actually looks consistent. Jacoby Myers has brought balance to that team, and then Daniel Jones has help. He has Josh Downs, he has Michael Pittman, he has Tyler Warren, who's been one of the best rookies in the league so far on offense this year. You also have Alec Pierce, who's been one of the best deep ball wide receivers in the NFL for the past 2 years at this point. So you're looking at this team, and if Jonathan Taylor doesn't score, you're not going to win. And that was exactly my fear of this team. And it's crazy that, oh, wow, that actually came to fruition. And that's actually true. You're now 1-4 when Jonathan Taylor doesn't score, you're 7-0 when he does score.
Yeah, and it's absurd to me. So I look at this schedule, the last 4 games, right? The Steelers held them to 45 yards, they lose. Outside of the Falcons game, Jonathan Taylor has started to, I don't know if regress is the right word, but I think he's faced really tough running teams. The Chiefs held them to 58 yards, and then the Texans held them to 85 on 21 carries. So at this point, if you can contain Jonathan Taylor, that's how you contain the Colts. And now that everyone's bought into that, I guarantee that when they face the Jaguars this week, that's going to be their main focus. If you stop Jonathan Taylor, let Daniel Jones win that game for them, and they're going to lose that game. They've lost 3 of the last 4 games, and the only game they won was the Berlin game against the Falcons. And other than that, I think, and that game also went to overtime. Very well could have been the Falcons winning that game, despite Jonathan Taylor rushing for 200 yards. So I think the Colts are fraudulent. I've been on this since the start of the season. They're an overtime loss away from being 0-4 the last month. So I absolutely smell blood in the water for them.
Yeah, and we picked them to go. And don't forget that Broncos game too. Like they definitely should
That
have
game they
lost
should have
that game as
lost.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, we're right about the Colts and the Texans. We were also right about because even though they started 1-5 and they started off slow, CJ Stroud was banged up. What have they done? They beat the Jags. They've beaten everybody in front of them. They beat the Titans. They beat the Bills, which was a big win for them. Now they beat the Colts. We smell blood in the water again. Another primetime game against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. I believe this should be Sunday Night Football. That game is going to be great. If they beat the Chiefs, not only are the Chiefs dead, but the Texans are going to win that. I think that the Texans are going to win that division most likely.
yeah, so that'll definitely be a fun race. And you kind of have a 3-team logjam there, but I only think 2 of them are legitimate. So definitely keep tabs there. But we were right about the Colts being frauds. We were right about the Texans not being dead. And then let's get this game out of the way. Jacoby Brissett has another perfect game for the Cardinals where he comes up just short, where he does just enough to make it a 1-possession game, but can't get it done at the end of it. You have a huge fumble from Bam Knight, which costs you in this game. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers look like the same Tampa Bay Buccaneers from earlier this season, where we're getting into 1-possession duels with teams like the Jets, now the Cardinals in Tampa. So it's like, okay, it seems like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be that 11-6, 10-7 team. Maybe you win a playoff game, maybe you don't, but I just don't. I kind of see them as kind of how the Steelers were post Ben Roethlisberger, where you're in the playoffs, and that's great, but maybe you probably aren't going to win a playoff game, and you're just winning your division by default.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bucky Irving returned. He got a touchdown. Good for Bucky Irving. But This Bucks team, it doesn't seem like their offense is flying on all cylinders. And Buka's definitely still banged up a little bit. Buck Ewing just recently returned. But this is a scrappy team where when they go and face a team like the Seahawks or the Rams or the Niners, I don't trust any of those teams. I don't trust them against any of these teams. And they are going to win that division most likely, unless if Carolina squeaks into there, which maybe that does still happen. But ultimately for the Bucks, I just with what we saw from Baker Mayfield to start the season to what we're seeing now, he's clearly playing through something. I just don't trust this Bucks team. They're 7-5, but have a negative point differential, and so I just don't trust them moving forward. They just came off of losing 4 of the last 5. Uh, Getting the win against the Cardinals is cool, but yeah, I don't trust them moving forward.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting race to the finish there. We'll see how the South turns out, but it's looking like the Panthers may actually get it done. And then we move over to another less than impressive game. Miami came, they saw, they conquered. The Saints tried, but again, their effort just wasn't enough. But the Saints at least made it a fun and competitive game, so it wasn't the worst watch on Red Zone.
No, and of course it's the main focal point of Red Zone every time. But Devon Achane, I want to respect Devon Achane. Devon Achane's a beast, and I think he's a great running back. Rushed for 130 in this game, super quick. We love him. But Tua does his annual, or I should say weekly interception. 14 interceptions now for Tua Tagovailoa. But the Saints, not a very good team. They're without Alvin Kamara in this game, and Chris Olave is banged up here. But Dolphins, they've won 3 straight, and now they're 5-7. So not technically dead, but they should be.
Yeah, Darren Waller, 2 catches, 47 yards in this game. So the tight end that won't go away, Darren Waller, leading receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Who thought you would have been saying that during week 13 at the beginning of the season?
I would have said it. Rap Hall of Fame.
Rap Hall of
Uh,
Fame, Darren Waller. Then we have the Falcons and Jets. They go to overtime. Again, another focal point of Red Zone where Scott Hansen is losing his mind over the 3-9 Jets and the 4-8 Falcons. And it's one of those games where you kind of appreciate football because these are 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, but they're still going head to head when pretty much all hope is lost in November, leaving it all out on the field, going into overtime. Jets coming up with a big win here. Falcons starting to just fall apart at the end of it. You have one good game from Kirk Cousins, and now looks like he got injured in that game and is not going to be the same the rest of the year.
yeah, I mean, Bijan had a good game, but otherwise, not a lot of noteworthy things for the Falcons. And then the Jets, I mean, Tyrod Taylor turning back the clock. Feels like he's been in the league for our entire existence. And I think we're probably right when we say that. But the Jets, you know what? They started off, I believe, 0-7, and now they've won 3 of the last 5. So credits to them. They beat the Bengals in a nail biter. They beat the Browns. They've beaten the Falcons. So they're winning games. And who predicted the Jets were going to win games when it didn't matter? The Brickyard. So another victory lap for the Brickyard. Starting to get exhausting.
Oh, the Bengals. If you only beat the Jets, you would definitely be in control to win the division. Oh, it's painful.
Nope. Couldn't have beat them. Couldn't have stopped them with 30 seconds left, I think it was.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
And then the Seahawks shut out the Vikings. Cool. Very cool.
Max Brosmer, UNH alumni, 4 interceptions, 96 total yards. Just not fair. A game that they probably should have called the mercy rule on in the third quarter. But the game went on. Justin Jefferson, 6 targets, 2 catches, 4 yards. Free Justin Jefferson, please. TJ Hawkinson is feasting, but not resulting in any points. So yeah, Seahawks, much better team. This is what we expected.
Free J Jeff. And then the Chargers win, but Justin Herbert gets surgery, and now he is day to day. So he had to repair a joint on his hand, I believe, get surgery. So that's definitely concerning for the Chargers. But Chargers just sticking around here at 8-4, hanging out in the AFC playoff picture.
Yeah, good win for them. Their defense showed out, granted against the Raiders, but still, a win is a win. Kamani Vidal stepping in, played excellent for them. And they're going to get Amari and Hampton back next week. So, fun team. I think, they'll still be a wild card team when it's all said and done, but good win for the Chargers. A win is a win.
And you want to talk about a great loss? Thank you, Dan Quinn, for going for it in overtime. I don't want to see a tie because we only had like 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. Maybe the Broncos score, maybe they don't. But Dan Quinn decided to go out there, try and win the game. And Marcus Mariota had someone who was wide open. He just needed to get the ball over Nick Bonito at the end of it. And what happened? The Washington Commanders end up losing it, and they free the AFC from having a weird one seed where the Broncos say go 13-3-1. So thank you, Dan Quinn. We all owe you because for if you're the Commanders, you want to lose this game because you want to as high a draft pick as possible throughout the draft, and then you kind of just want to go for it. The season's lost, so I get exactly why the Commanders did it, and then the Broncos get their win in overtime. You escape in this game, and then my friend actually had a fantasy game where if this didn't go into overtime, he would have won the game. But since it went to overtime, Bo Nick's throw at the end of it that ended up helping the Broncos score in overtime, he ended up losing by like zero point 0.4 points. I'm like, oh,
Pain. Fantasy
painful,
football
man.
pain. That is painful. I can say I like the new overtime rules because it's forcing the team that scores the touchdown after the other team scores to go for two. And I'm so glad they did that. Something that I don't think every team would have done. Big shout outs in this game. There's two things that I think of with the Commanders. First of all, Zach Ertz coming out of retirement, essentially, getting the Zach Ertz that we know and love, turning back the clock to Eagles Zach Ertz, 10 catches, 106. And then also, I don't know if you noticed this in the broadcast, but did you notice when Traylon Burks got a touchdown and Mike Tirico was going ballistic over the touchdown because it was a one-handed grab, comparing it to OBJ, and
Yeah.
Chris Collinsworth was just like, nah, bro, it's not that crazy. It's just a catch. It was a good catch, but did you catch that in the broadcast at all? That's the only thing I mentioned here otherwise.
Yeah, I saw that on the broadcast. They immediately show that play here, but Mike Tirico is kind of wholesome just because he does seem like a kid on Christmas. He's kind of grateful to be there. You saw his first year calling Sunday Night Football with Chris Collinsworth. Everyone was saying you need to get yourself someone who looks at you the same way that Mike Tirico looks at Chris Collinsworth. So I like his passion. I like that he gets us excited. He gets a little bit ahead of himself sometimes, but don't we all? So I like Mike Tirico, and honestly, him and Collinsworth are my two favorite broadcasters. I know that's not the most popular take in the world, but I think like Chris Collinsworth, he's kind of just like that old
Charming.
boomer. He kind of has that southern charm to him where a lot of people are like, oh, he glazes the Chiefs. Like, who doesn't? Or as the boomers say, gloss instead of glaze. But
Yeah. I agree. I love Collinsworth. I find him charming. I've always loved him. And Mike Tirico is great. But this was a great primetime game. Ultimately, I had bet that the Commanders were going to cover the spread, and they did. So thank you for the Commanders. Marcus Mariota plays a good game. Has some good runs in there as well. So great game overall. And the Broncos win another close game. So credits to them. They're now 10-2 and still looking at that one seed potentially.
yeah, and then we have another team competing for the one seed with the Denver Broncos, and that is the New England Patriots, who are now 11-2. And a lot of people weren't picking this team to make the playoffs, but we actually had them in the wild card um, bubble. We had a couple of teams that we predicted to go 10-7, like the Chargers were in there. The Patriots were in there. I forget who the other team was, but we had a couple of teams, probably the Jaguars, that we picked to go 10-7. While we didn't predict this season from the New England Patriots, we didn't have them outside of playoff contention. We didn't have them outside of the realm of possibility that they could make it to the playoffs or win the division. I kind of just needed to see a little bit more to believe it. And this team, I don't know if it was just Tommy DeVito being spited by the Giants, but the Patriots were playing the most inspired football. And the fact that Eli Manning had a Manning cast that game, and he had to watch this where you just see him get devastated after that Marcus Jones 95-yard punt return. And then after that, you also have the Giants. I don't know what happened to Young Hoku, but have you ever seen a play where they can't even kick the ball. Are you kidding me? You know it's bad when your kicker can't even do it. I don't know if they're trying to do a fake one, but he literally just kicks the ground. So it's just one of those games where every single thing was going right for the New England Patriots. And then you have Travion Henderson in this game start to show why he's a good talent for the New England Patriots, where you can involve him in the pass game, you can involve him in the run game as well. He's their leading rusher, averaging 6 yards a carry in this game, mind you. Then Hunter Henry is a little bit banged up at the beginning of the season, similar to Cole Kmet, but he comes out, has a big game in this one. And Kyle Williams, one catch in this game, but that one catch was a sick 33-yard pass from Drake May in the end zone, gets both feet in bounds. And this team is so bizarre, kind of how they do it by committee on offense, because you look at it, like, they don't jump off the screen, but they just have 5, 6 guys who are really, really, really good. And they all have like 3, 4 catches. Drake May is really good at spreading around the targets. And every single player on this team is buying into Mike Vrabel and his intensity, where he's kind of just that honest, direct, but fair players coach. I think this team is really buying into it. So excited to see them just come out on Monday Night Football after that Bengals game, where they're like, people said, oh, they almost lost to the Bengals. And then they wrote the New England Patriots off. But
Nope. Yeah, I agree. The Patriots, a couple of things to mention. For one thing, the Patriots, we predicted them to go like 10-7. We predicted them to make the playoffs. We were right about that, but I didn't expect them to be 11-2 and the 1 seed. But that speaks to Drake May, a guy that what they're criticizing him now for is that he hasn't had a 300-yard passing game. But you look at his numbers, and he's had 280, 290. Last week he had
he
294.
leads the league in passing. Like, what?
He literally leads the league in passing. He's 23 touchdowns, 6 picks, re-entered the MVP conversation. And for the Patriots, like, the other exciting thing about them is obviously we know what Mike Vrabel can do, and obviously we know what Drake May can do. But I also want to shout out Marcus Jones. I mean, he had a 94-yard punt return. He also had a few other massive punt returns in this game outside of that one. And Marcus Jones, he's already been an all-pro for the Patriots. He's definitely been one of the last few hits that Bill Belichick had as a coach. But at this point, he might be the next Matthew Slater for the Patriots for the way he's been on special teams for them. High praise, of course. But another thing, you also mentioned Kyle Williams. And now over the last 4 games, he's caught 3 massive passes. He had that 72-yard touchdown for the Bucs game. He also had a huge play against the Bengals late in Cincinnati. And then he had that 33-yard touchdown today. So he's another deep threat that he could be playing into the mix there. But excellent on the Patriots side. And then for the Giants, we want to talk about, these players that are washed that, Celtic Shaq is often referenced, Sacramento Kings, Russell Westbrook, and I'm sure there's plenty more, Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. But let's talk about Younghoe Koo on the Giants, because you want to talk about a fall from grace. How about Younghoe Koo, who at one point I would have put as a top 5 kicker, misses the kick entirely, stumbles onto himself, maybe the most embarrassing field goal attempt in the history of the NFL, sadly. He's probably done. That's probably the last we see of Younghoe Koo, and it's just not the memory I want to remember for him. So, yeah, tough one there.
And then of kicks.
Literally, yeah. And of course it's in New York. God willing. Of course it's a New York team that does that. Last thing to say, Jackson Dart is clearly someone needs to check in. Someone needs to call a therapist, because I think he's actually trying to kill himself with the way he's playing. That play that he had running out of bounds, what caused ultimately a fight there. But is Jackson Dart, like, I understand he lost Scadaboo and he lost Malik Neighbors, and now at this point he's relying on Darius Slayton to be his top receiver. But is something going on with Jackson Dart? Is he listening to emo music? Like, what's going on with Jackson Dart?
No, Jackson Dart, what he is the Jameis Winston of Josh Allen's at this point, because he is one of the most electric players to watch, and he's putting himself in harm's way a lot of times in this game. And this is a situation where you don't really need to do that. This is a team that's out of the playoffs. You don't need to put yourself in a position where you're going to get hit. I get the first one. He was kind of going out of bounds, and the Patriots just laid a hit on him, but he's going to be one of those guys where if he doesn't learn to slide, he's going to be out of the league. I believe Shannon Sharp was tweeting about it probably within the next 3 or 4 years, let alone playing football. But I don't want to see that because I do see a really electric player, do see a really entertaining player in Jackson Dart, and he has some incredible flashes. So I want to see this guy stay healthy, but yeah, he just plays with a reckless abandon here, and it does look like it sometimes he is trying to get hurt. But him and Cam Scatabo kind of had the similar vibe, so I'm glad that these guys are both on the same team together. But I think he's a fun player to watch overall.
The thing is with the Giants is, I mentioned like the teams that are just bad and the teams that are bad at being bad. But I feel like the Giants are good at being bad right now because they are playing really competitively, and they're 2-11. They should be vying for potentially the number one overall pick. And all of these games have been close. Like this Broncos game, they should have won. They should have won against the Niners. They blew that game. The Bears game, the Packers game, the Lions game, and there's plenty of other examples. The Cowboys game earlier this season, like this is a team that had things gone their way, or maybe they had the right coach, maybe things fall in their way. This is a team that I think would have been in the playoff picture right now. So if they can nail their coach down this upcoming year, whoever that may be, maybe it's somebody float around Mike Tomlin, maybe someone wants to float around, I don't know, an offensive coordinator that could work for them. But this is a team that I think is going to be really good next year if they get it right with their head coach and they get it right with their draft, because this team definitely has a lot of potential.
Oh my God, Mike Tomlin would be the most Giants hire if he left Pittsburgh this year, and I think Pittsburgh just gave him an extension a year or two ago. But yeah, I just don't. That would be the most Giants hire of all time, where you're just like, all right, it didn't work out in Pittsburgh, and you're kind of outdated head coach. No reason not to try it here, right?
Right. I mean, they tried with Brian Daboll the best they could, but good lord, I don't know who their head coach is going to be because it's got to be an offensive guy, I assume, given the fact that you have Jackson Dart that you're trying to develop. But
They hired Ben
I don't know.
McAdoo. That didn't work out though. You hire Brian Daboll. That doesn't work out. So now they're probably gonna potentially look at a defensive head coach, and it's probably gonna be someone like Matt Eberflus if the Cowboys make the playoffs.
How do you feel about like someone like a Robert Sala for them? Do you think that would work?
I think it could. Yeah, I think Robert Saleh didn't really get a fair shake in New York. And he's been a big reason why the San Francisco 49ers have played so well on defense this year. You replace um, your previous defensive coordinator last year with Robert Saleh. So I think that was a big addition. He has the kind of magnetic aura around him that you want from your head coach. So overall, I do think Robert Saleh would be a good option. Then he would move from San Francisco back to New York, kind of in a similar neighborhood. So he'd be familiar with the area.
I know who they're actually going to hire, though. I mentioned Robert Sala. That's who I would hire if you're going defensive, but it's going to be Dennis Allen. You heard it here
Yeah.
first. Bears DC. He's played well. He's coached well for DC. So it's going to be the Bears. It's Dennis Allen. You heard it here first.
Tampa Bay
But
Buccaneers offensive coordinator is always an option. Two
I
straight
mean,
years, two offensive coordinators.
it's worked. What if it's not broke? Don't fix it. So I see that there. But that being said, we have a few more weeks of the NFL season. The playoff picture is slowly starting to form. I have what the current playoffs look like if it ended today and who they'd match up with. We're covering this pretty much up until playoff seeding has been clinched. Shall we start with the NFC or AFC?
Yeah, let's start with the AFC. And I think the AFC is interesting to start with that. All of the divisions could potentially have a new winner this year, where the Chiefs won their division last year. The Bills won their division last year. I believe the Steelers won it. Or the Ravens won it last year, and they could potentially fall out of the division lead to a team like the Bengals or the Steelers. And then the South, the Texans end up winning their division, but it could be the Jaguars this year. So we could see four new divisional winners in the AFC this year. So the playoff picture is really getting shaken up, and it's a lot different this year. And I think it's a good step for the NFL where they're like, we need to figure out some different storylines. And I feel like they've done a really good job at creating drama, creating headlines at the end of the year, especially with Joe Burrow coming back Thanksgiving week. and then potentially in the mix for the North. I think it's going to be a wild finish to the NFL season in the AFC.
Oh, 100%. And everything you mentioned there, Broncos are probably going to win that AFC West. I think it's going to, the AFC South is probably the most exciting division to look at for the AFC. And then the AFC North, you're believing that the Bengals are going to run the table and be 8-9, 9-8. They could potentially win. Ravens, Lamar Jackson's banged up. The Steelers are 2-5 in the last 7 games. And then obviously the AFC East looks clinched with the Patriots currently. But let's look at the playoff picture now. If it ended today, Patriots would be the 1 seed. Do you see them staying as the 1 seed, or do the Broncos jump them potentially?
I think they stay as the 1 seed just because the Broncos have tougher matchups. I think the Patriots are only going to lose one more game, and it's probably going to be because they already wrapped up the um, number 1 seed here. And then the Broncos, you have to play the Chiefs again in Kansas City. You have to play the Chargers again. So you have some tough games for the Broncos. So I think the Patriots are going to stay at the 1 seed. Your only tough game is against the Ravens. You get them off of a bye. Lamar really hasn't looked like himself, so I think you're going to be ready to go for that game. Um, Mike Vrabel also always coaches against the Ravens really well. In the Titans era with Derrick Henry, they always matched up. And then I think your only other game you could lose is against the Bills, but you also play the Bills at home in Gillette Stadium. So I definitely think that's a winnable game. So I will give the Bills that win, but I think they're going to finish 14-3.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also like they face the Bills off of a bye, and this is going to be at home at Gillette Stadium, which they've played fairly well in too. So I think they can still definitely pull that win out. Buffalo, I'll give them some credit. I think they win that game. And then other than that, it's the Jets and Dolphins to end it. So 14-3, I think, is very attainable, if not 13-4. Meanwhile, the Broncos face the Packers, the Jags, the Chiefs, and the Chargers all in a row to end the season. They have this Raiders game at the 4
It's a
o'clock
tough
slate on
schedule.
Sunday. Yeah, they could potentially fall. I think they lose maybe 2 of those games because they did lose to the Chargers earlier this year too, but in a close game against the Chiefs. So those are kind of the teams that are in the mix for the 1 seed. And the remaining schedule, Jags are currently the 3 seed as the NFC or the AFC South, but the Colts are right there tied with them, but they have the tiebreaker. And then the Texans are flying high at 7-5, technically out of the playoff picture. But given my stance on the Colts, I think the Texans are going to leap the Colts and potentially the Jaguars to win that division.
What's the Jaguars' remaining schedule for the rest of this season?
Rest of this year, they have the Colts on Sunday. Then it's the Jets, the Broncos, the Colts, and then the Titans to end it. So kind of middle of the pack.
Yeah, so I could definitely see them kind of going 50-50 in those games. Maybe you go 3-2 to finish the year.
I think they beat the Colts, beat the Jets, lose to the Broncos. I do think they could beat the Jags twice. Usually they split with the Colts. I'll give them the Colts. I think they split there, and then they should beat the Titans. But by then, maybe they're resting starters. Who knows? So
Yeah.
I do think the Texans could leapfrog them still. If not, they win that division. Texans leap the Colts. And then in the AFC North, worst teams according to the Brickyard, the Ravens are 6-6. They're on track to face the Chargers in the first round. But we also have the Steelers that are still vying for that division as well. And the Bengals are waking up. They have Joe Burrow back, and we've seen it what feels like every year. They start off slow, they lose a few games, Joe Burrow gets hurt, then they come back and win the next 5 games, and now they're 9-8. And either they make that division and they win it, or they just miss out on the playoffs. And that's how it's been pretty much since the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, it's been that way since the Super Bowl run. It's been tough to see, but they really only have one tough game left this year, and that is going to be against the Buffalo Bills. And, the Bengals have played the Bills tough, And Joe Burrow has kind of owned Josh Allen throughout his career, and Sean McDermott likes to play zone. So I definitely think that the Bengals are going to be able to put up points and end up coming out on top versus the Buffalo Bills, because historically they do match up well against this team. And Sean McDermott has not had an answer for Joe Burrow, and he has not had an answer for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And when you play a quarterback like Joe Burrow, you can't just sit back and play zone, which is why the Buffalo Bills have lost pretty much every single big game. As you go up against Mahomes, go up against Burrow in the playoffs, and they just pick apart your zone defense because they know the right throw, they know where their receivers are going to be at the right time.
And as of right now, Joe Burrow is 2-1 against Josh Allen. They have the playoff win that he has the advantage on, but does have the advantage there historically against him, although it's a smaller sample size. But I think Joe Burrow has proven that he can beat Josh Allen, and we'll know at 1 o'clock on Sunday if they beat him. But other than that, I think they beat the Ravens again. And then after that, if they can beat the Bills and the Ravens, then it's Dolphins, Cardinals, Browns to end it.
So the
So I
table
think
is
that,
set. So you just need to win. I think you just need to beat Buffalo. If you beat Buffalo, you win your division. Especially like Lamar Jackson just hasn't looked like himself. And if you beat the Ravens again, then they lose to the Patriots. Then you have the tiebreaker and you're in. And I don't think anyone is going to believe in the Steelers to do that either. So the path is real for the Bengals, who are once dead at 3-8. And then for the AFC, right now we have like the Chargers, Colts, and the Bills in the wild card spot. Do you see the Chargers still hanging out at like that 5 or 6 seed?
yeah, I think so. I mean, they do actually have a very tough schedule ahead. They face the Eagles on Monday Night Football, the Chiefs, who they did beat in Brazil to start, then the Cowboys, Texans, and Broncos. I do think they are going to lose a few games in this mix, and potentially you could see, even if the Texans don't leapfrog the Colts, I think they can still sneak in, because the Chargers, I think, in this are going to go 50-50. I don't think they beat the Eagles. I don't know if they're going to beat the Texans either, or the Cowboys, honestly. So
And
I
then the
still think they
Chiefs
make it,
too.
but they're going to, yeah, I still think they go 10-7, most likely.
Yeah, and this is a team like Justin Herbert did just have surgery. I think you can split in those games, but I could see you losing to Denver, especially since you beat them the first time around. And then I could definitely see Kansas City beating you again. So I think if you lose to Philadelphia, that would be your cue that you might miss out on the playoffs. Then a team like the Chiefs could jump in instead of the Chargers. And I think the Texans could jump in over the Colts. So if I had to predict it, I do think that's how it's going to go. And then we would see the Bills, Chargers, and Chiefs as the wild card teams, the Bengals as the 4 seed, and then either the Texans or the Jaguars at the 3 seed, and then the Broncos at the 2 seed, Patriots at the 1 seed.
Yeah, and I think that sets it up great. We would see potentially Broncos, Chiefs, Texans, and Texans and Jags most likely, and then we would see Bengals and potentially the Bills right there. So that'd be a good match. I think those would all be great matchups when it's all said and done. But AFC, it's been it's been a great contest right here, especially because all of these teams are 8-4. Texans are vying for it. Chiefs are still somewhat in the mix, so it's going to be great to see. Then in the NFC, this is insane because all of these teams are 9-4 for the most part. The NFC South is really just the lame duck. If we look at the divisions right now, most of these are fairly locked up. Eagles have a game and a half advantage on the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys can still win that division. NFC North, I think it's going to come down to Packers and Bears. And then NFC South, it's either Panthers or Bucks. I honestly think the Panthers could win that division currently, if we're at where we are right now. And then NFC West, I still think it's the Rams division to lose currently.
Yeah, it's the Rams division to lose, and then you play the Seattle Seahawks again. So pretty much whoever wins that game is going to win the division. But the Seahawks should have a easier schedule since the Rams did win the division last year. So Seattle will have that advantage heading down the stretch. So I think that'll be a tough, contentious division. And then you did beat Seattle, but it was a really close game. Sam Darnold turned the ball over 4 times. So that'll be a really good test for the Rams. So pretty much whoever wins that game is going to win the division there. And then I definitely could see the Panthers doing it, but it seems like the Buccaneers have just done everything they need to do to stay afloat. But they do have the experience. They have some consistency with Bucky Irving now being back on the team. It's just going to be, can that defense hold up with all of those injuries at the end of the year? That'll be the tough part for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I agree. If the Bucks can stay healthy, then I think they should win. The Panthers, because they did win against the Rams, that means that due for a loss against the Saints, beating the Bucks, losing to the Seahawks, and then beating the Bucks again. If they finish what I predicted them to be 8-9, and I do think the Panthers are going to finish 8-9. Bucks, I think, will finish 9-8 most likely. But right now,
And
if it was all, oh yeah, go ahead.
can you see the Lions or the Cowboys sneaking over the 49ers? Because I think for me, like if the Lions lose on Thursday, you're out of the playoffs. But if you win, I still think you could probably be the 7 seed and overtake the San Francisco 49ers. Though you still have a lot of tough games to play. So the Niners, though.
I think if they beat the whoever wins this Thursday night game is the team that I think can still make the 7 seed, because I do think the Cowboys can go on a run, especially because they've been playing hot recently. I don't know if I am a little nervous with how the Lions have played, especially losing Amon-Ra potentially. So that could be really tough. But I think whoever wins that Thursday night game could leapfrog the Niners, because the Niners, they've had a great story. Their schedule is pretty easy to end it, but I just don't know with the Niners if I can fully trust them, especially down the stretch. So I think the Cowboys can still make noise, or the Lions could.
Yeah, 49ers though, they are 4-1 in their division, which is huge. And the Lions are 1-3 in their division. Cowboys are 3-1. So the Lions, like a lot of 3 of their losses have come within the division to not only the um, Packers twice, but you also lost to the Vikings. And then you have to play
Yeah.
the Bears again. The only team you beat the Bears, and the Bears might be ready for you next time. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle for the Lions. And then, do you think if you had to pick, do you think the Niners just stay there though at 9-4?
Yeah, I think so. Their schedule's fairly easy. I had it just up just now. They face the Titans, the Colts, the Bears, and Seahawks. So really, Bears and Seahawks are the big question marks, but I do think they can beat the Colts and the Titans. So those are wins right there. That brings that at 11 wins. And then
Go
these
two
other
and
two
two, you're
teams are,
in pretty much.
yeah, they're in at this point. And then the Cowboys, if they win, they're 7-5-1. Hideous bye week, by the way. Hideous tie. I hate the tie. But I think the Cowboys, I think, are ultimately could be vying for that 7th seed. But with the way that the Seahawks and Packers are playing, along with the Niners, I just don't know if there's any room for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be the Eagles having to fall apart for the Cowboys. So I do think the Cowboys actually do have an easier path to the playoffs than the Lions would. And yeah, you look at the Niners, they don't have too many more tough games to play. Where if you're the Lions, you have to play the Bears again. You have Dallas on Thursday night. So if you lose to Dallas, it's pretty much a wrap on your season, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can agree. But it's going to be interesting. Unfortunately, I do think the Lions are going to be the odd man out, just based on how they've been playing, Amon-Ra being down, and just not the same team that we've seen of recent, especially, how good their division has been as well.
Yeah, because you pretty much have to run the table at this point to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I just don't know if they can do that. Let me look at their schedule. I'm pretty sure their schedule gets pretty tough also, because they face the Cowboys, then the Rams, and then it's Steelers, Vikings, and Bears. Bears to end the season, potentially to clinch a playoff spot for them, potentially. So, yeah,
Bears
I
may
don't know
already
if the
have
Lions
the
can do
1
it.
seed too, or they're going to be playing for the 1 seed. So you could potentially be playing upset ball against Ben Johnson at that point. And the Lions, they still are a dangerous team because you do have Dan Campbell. So the thing is, if they do snap out of this funk, this season it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like their year that they're going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I hope they do. I love this Lions team, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But that being said, we have a whole slate of week 14. This is where we're really going to start to know who's in the playoffs and who's not. I do have all the games up in front of me, along with the nice, juicy ESPN bet spreads in front of us. We've been very good this year predicting games, as we know. We are up on the year, so that's good for the Brickyard.
Yeah, you crushed it this week. Let the fans
Yeah,
know like what they're missing out on because you pick the spread, you give your take each week, and you've been making a good amount, and you've been hitting so far. I mean, cover the Commanders covering the spread, definitely a big hit there. You hit the Packers and Lions game, I believe, had a really good Thanksgiving. So tell people how you've been doing on your parlays.
yeah. And I'm not a guy that's overzealous, but the Packers game, I predicted that the Packers were going to win because you never bet on the Lions on Thanksgiving. I bet on the over/under for the Bengals to cover, and they did. I bet on the Bears to win against the Eagles. I was right. And then I bet on the Texans to beat the Colts this past week. So I was right there. Missed on the Falcons, although the Falcons probably should have won that game. But then otherwise, I bet on the Panthers spread. I was right there. And then the Commander spread, I was right about as well. So these are all games that we predicted and bet on and cashed out. So if you're a betting man, maybe consider what we have to say.
Yeah, and my Jersey Mike's picks this week, I've been doing those this season 6-2. So that was pretty good as well. So if you're not doing your Jersey Mike's picks, getting free rewards. They are an official sponsor of the show. Download the Jersey Mike's app and then make sure you get your NFL picks in for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. It may be too late now, but get yourself ready for next year. But I've been above 50% pretty much every week. This week going 6-2 in one of the most important weeks. So make sure you're filling out your Jersey Mike's pick. Use code Brickyard in the description below.
Yes, we even know Mike himself, and he attests, he endorses us. But Thursday night, the season hangs in the balance for both Dallas and Detroit, and the Lions are favored at 3 at home. Uncertain about the status of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Cowboys are riding high at 3 straight wins. Their defense looking a lot better, just beating the Chiefs. However, they are 2-4 away from home, so not ideal for them. Early pickings for me, the Lions without Amon-Ra. I don't usually like to bet against the Lions. However, Thursday night, short week, I think the Cowboys pull off the win.
I mean, it is a short week, but they did also play last Thursday. So did the Cowboys.
True.
So for me, with the Lions, with the Cowboys, there's typically this trend of them playing really well. Everyone starts to talk about how great the Cowboys are. Everyone's kind of pushing the Lions down, dismissing them, and I think that is the perfect storm for a upset and the Lions to kind of get a little bit of their mojo back in this game, where the Cowboys, Pickens, CeeDee Lamb going off. And then you mentioned they don't have a great record away from home, which is funny because it's kind of been the opposite. And then you're also going up against Matt Eberflus, who Jared Goff and the Lions have kind of owned over the past few years. So I do think that the Lions will end up winning this game and cover the spread and win by a field goal here. I just think there's too much negativity for the Lions at this point, and there's too much positive coverage of the Cowboys. And that's usually when the Cowboys falter. That's usually when Dak Prescott ends up faltering as well. So I do think it's a perfect storm for the Lions to get a little bit of their mojo back, even though recognize Dallas definitely could win, and they should win this game.
They should. History does point over the last 5 years, they are 1-4 against the Cowboys. Cowboys have had their number. However, we do know that history does not always repeat itself. I root for the Lions in this game, but I do think the Cowboys have historically had their number over the last 5 years. So may the best man win as far as Cowboys and Lions. And whoever wins this game, I think, can still make the playoffs. But let's go over some of the games on the 1 o'clock slate that don't matter all that much because there's a lot of games that do matter. Dolphins, Jets. Dolphins win, I think. They're the team that just
Is this in New York
wins
or
games.
Miami, though?
This is in New York. Ooh, 41 degrees.
I mean, it's a little bit cold. I don't know. Like, Dolphins should take care of business. It sounds great, but once the temperature does drop below the temperature of 54 degrees, Tua is not quite himself. He's not quite the same guy at all. And Tyrod Taylor has been playing well for the Jets. So honestly, I think the Jets win this game.
Okay, so here's a stat. Tua Tagovailoa in degrees under 45 degrees is 0-7. So I'm going to revert back to what I said earlier. Jets are winning this game because it's 41 degrees in East Rutherford, New Jersey. They are favored at 2.5, and the Jets have won 3 of their last 5 games. Let's go, Jets. Tyrod Taylor. And Tua
And Dan
also.
Orlovsky did just say, like, watch out for the Dolphins. This has been a team playing well. And that is exactly your time to sell stock. What do you do? Sell the news. What do you do? Buy the rumors. And I am selling the news this week.
Yes, I love it. I'm going to pick the Jets. I forgot how cold. I forgot that it was in East Rutherford. I forgot it's December. Yes, go Jets. Commanders and Vikings. Over under a 41.5. Vikings are favored at 1.5 at home, where they are 1-4. Who's the quarterback is my question, because if it's any of the quarterbacks that I've seen from the Vikings outside of Carson Wentz, I'm picking the Commanders in this game. I just think if your quarterback is better off spiking it on the ground, chances are your chances of winning are pretty low. So I'll take the Commanders in this one.
Yeah, Minnesota, go out there, get Sam Howell. So at least it's interesting. Sam Howell went out there. He's had some games where he's balled out, thrown for 400 yards. So why don't you go ahead, see if you can pick him up? I know he's on a team right now, but overall, I think the Commanders will just generally win this game because Marcus Mariota's been fine. He's been okay.
Yeah.
And that's good
Yeah,
enough
he's
to
been all right.
beat whatever the Vikings are doing right now.
Yeah, and they've lost 4 straight. Not ideal. Now, another riveting game. We're getting all the bad games out of the way first. Titans and Browns. Shador versus Cam for the rookie battle. Browns are favored at 3.5 in Ohio. It is 30 degrees there. Tickets as low as
Wow.
$7. If you're lucky to be in the state of Ohio, consider buying tickets for this riveting game. Over under of 33.5, which might be the lowest I've ever seen.
Wait, are they paying people $7 to go to the game, or do you have to pay $7 to go? Because
It doesn't specify, but $7. I mean, how many nickels is that? We don't know. 28
how
nickels,
many
I think,
nickels
something like that.
is
How many nickels? We
$7?
don't know. 70, something like that.
There's
R.I.P. the
30
penny.
nickels in a dollar.
20, what? No, there's 20 nickels in a dollar.
20
What are you
nickels
talking
in a
about?
dollar.
Yeah, it's 5 cents. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Either way, $7 gets you a nice cozy game in 30-degree Ohio weather. Beautiful sights. You see Cam Ward versus Shador Sanders. Boy, is that riveting. The Titans. I mean, they're just a team that's so bad I can't bet on. So I got to go Browns here, surely.
Yeah, just like how this game will be very, very brown, very shit. I think the Browns will win.
Yes, I agree. Imagine naming your team after a Family Guy character. That's crazy.
Is it an elf? Is it a dog? Or are they brown? We don't know.
We don't know. Another game to go through. Seahawks and Falcons. This is the last of the games that aren't as important. Maybe there's
Is
one
this
more to
in
cover, but
Seattle or Atlanta?
this is in Atlanta. Seahawks are favored by a touchdown. The Falcons, they were frisky against the Jets, but couldn't get it done. I like the Seahawks, given their circumstances, to win this game.
Yeah, I'll take Seattle as well. They've been good against the bad teams, and they've been just winning all the games that they should this year. They're favored by a touchdown. I do think that is a lot. The Falcons could potentially cover that, especially when you're coming off a game where you just shut a team out going 26-0. So do you like the Falcons to cover? Or do you think Seattle will inevitably blow them out?
If I could buy half a point, I would. I think this could come down to a touchdown. So I think Vegas kind of nailed the spread. But at 7.5, if this moves to 7.5, then I think the Falcons could be a play there. Just like with this next game, Bucks and Saints. Bucks are favored at 8.5. Despite that, they have had a lot of close games. When they've lost, they've been blown out. But in those close games, including the Cardinals, the Seahawks game, the Jets game, the Texans game, the Falcons, they play a lot of close games. And right now they're favored at 8.5. Last time they faced the Saints, they blew them out. But that was a much different Saints team, or a Bucks team as well. This is when the Bucks were 6-2. They were riding high, and now they have since fallen a little bit. So I think the Saints cover, but I do think the Bucks still win this game.
Yeah, I like that. Excuse me. I like that cover as well. The Buccaneers, I don't really see them having the ability to blow anybody out. So I do think 8.5 is definitely a trap there, but I will take Tampa to win and cover there.
All right. And then donning the number 9, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, 11 o'clock slate, 25 degrees in Buffalo. 5.5 point favorites are the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you've talked me into it. Maybe it's because of how well you fell out that Joe Burrow jersey. But I think the Bengals win this game. I don't know. I've seen crazier things. They got to run the table. They're more desperate. Buffalo probably makes the playoffs anyways. I think the Bengals win this game.
Yeah, and Buffalo, they have the Texans on their tails, so the Texans could potentially knock them out of a wild card spot. But overall, I do think with their schedule, they should be locked into that 6, 7 seed there. But I do think Cincinnati is on a mission here. They smell blood in the water. They're only 2 games behind the Steelers, who they split with, and the Baltimore Ravens, who they just beat. And that was an electric game where Joe Burrow comes back. They end up getting 5 turnovers versus the Ravens. So if you're going to turn over Lamar Jackson a few times, I definitely think you can do a little bit, maybe not stop the Buffalo Bills, but at least make them uncomfortable. And then this is kind of a must-win playoff game for the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bills are looking up, and the Patriots are already out of reach. You're not going to catch them in your division this year, so I do think Cincinnati wins this game, which would have them covering the spread, but I do think this is just going to be one of those shootouts for Cincinnati where you have a signature Jamar Chase game where he gets maybe 20 targets. But, I mean, the Bills' defense, by no stretch of the imagination, has been impressive. Josh Allen, it took him 6 touchdowns to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have looked pretty banged up, pretty injured here without Bucky Irving. And now you're going to tell me that Joe Burrow can't go out there and do similar things to what Tampa Bay did. So I think the Bengals are in for a huge breakout game. And then people are really going to put them in the conversation. And again, we're going to be, 3 weeks early calling this to happen.
Yeah. And I honestly, the over under of 52.5, I think that might be an over because the Bengals defense sucks. So does Buffalo. You have 2 great quarterbacks. And also, we haven't seen a Jamar Chase 200-yard game yet. And I feel like there's always one game a year where we see that from him. The closest we got was against Jacksonville in week 2, but otherwise haven't seen that explosion from Jamar Chase. I think we see that in this game. So this game, we have the Bengals, and I do think they cover. Even if the Bills win, I think it's going to be determined by a field goal.
And if they lose, then
So
you're looking at the wild card race. Like, I don't know. I don't know, Jim. Jim, I don't know.
it's going to be interesting. And then we have 2 huge games on 11 o'clock still to cover. Jags and Colts. Winner of this game probably wins that division. Colts are favored at 1.5 on the road. And I'm trying to remember. What's the Colts record against the Jags?
In Jacksonville.
Colts record in Jacksonville. Let's just look here. Just information, just, for the sake of it. Last, 10 years? Let's just ponder this. Oh, that's not very good. 7-12 against the Jaguars in the last 10 years? That can't be right. Oh, wait, no, because they can't beat the Jags. No matter how bad the Jags have been, let's not forget that the Jags have had not one, but 2-14 seasons in those games. They have Urban Meyer wins in there as well, who only had 2 wins in the NFL. I don't know.
Against the Colts.
Against the Colts. And the Jags are, I think, a better team. If they can shut down Jonathan Taylor, then I think the Jags are winning this game, especially because the Colts are not good on the road. They're 2-3 on the road, and the Jags are 4-2 at home, soon to be 5-2.
Yeah, and then say what you will. We're not like Daniel Jones fans, and we've been right about Daniel Jones, but did you see he's also dealing with a fibula injury as well? So not only does Daniel Jones suck just for the sake that he is the Walt Jr. of the NFL, and he acts like that on the sideline and on the field, but he's also injured, so you handicap him there. Then the Jaguars' offense has just been consistent, so you're essentially saying that the Colts are 4.5 point favorites in Jacksonville when historically Jacksonville has owned them in Jacksonville. So I definitely think that they go out there, beat the Indianapolis Colts, and this is just poetic for the Colts and with how we've been calling the season that you go out there, have a tough loss versus the Chiefs, you have a loss versus the Texans, and then suddenly you are essentially 2 games back in your division because the Jaguars will have the tiebreaker over you and will be a game ahead of you. And then you face them and the Texans again. So, like, this is just poetic for how the season is playing out for the Colts.
Yeah, this is exactly what we called it. They're an overtime loss against the Falcons away from losing the last 4 games. And I don't think not enough people in the media have sounded the alarm on the Colts. I called this when they beat the Titans, when they were riding the highest. I'm like, I don't trust this team. I trust Jonathan Taylor. He deserves to be in the MVP conversation. But when Daniel Jones needs to make a play, he doesn't. And we've been right about that. Their defense has regressed over the last few weeks. I'm on that bandwagon. I've been on there early. Jags are going to win this game, and the Colts are going to start vying for a playoff spot and potentially fall out of it.
Yeah.
And then,
And then
the last of the 1 o'clock slates, Steelers, Ravens. Ravens are favored at 6 points on in Baltimore. I don't know about you, but what do we know about AFC North games, especially in December? They are disgusting, gritty games that are usually 16-13 historically. And I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be the case here. The Steelers, they've been struggling. They've lost 5 of their last 7. The Ravens have not looked great either. Lamar Jackson clearly still hurt. I think the Steelers are going to cover this spread, and ultimately I think it's going to be 16-13. Whoever wins this game, I don't think it matters. I think probably the Steelers if I had to guess, but it's going to be 16-13. One of these teams is going to win this game.
well, Jim, I picked the Steelers to go 8-1 before the season started, and they need a tie in there somewhere, so might as well be against the Ravens, right? Both these teams have looked pathetic over the past few weeks. The Ravens' offense hasn't been right. Lamar Jackson's definitely still dealing with the injury, and then the Steelers are just beyond unimpressive at this point in the end of the year. So why not have a 13-13 good old AFC North tie in this one where no one can just score after the third quarter?
God, I hate when you predict ties, to be honest, because you've been right, especially this year. You called a tie earlier this year. So if there's ever a game that's going to be a tie, Steelers and Ravens, 16-16, 13-13, whatever it may be, it's going to be a
9-9.
classic. 9-9, maybe. It's going to be a classic. I just know it's going to be a classic AFC North matchup. We know that for a fact, especially because we're in December now. We're due for one, and it's usually Ravens and Steelers and where we see that matchup.
Yeah.
So I think
It'll
we see
be
it
a
there.
rough one.
Now we have an interesting 4 o'clock slate. Not too bad of games, I would say, but let's get the rough ones out of the way. Broncos, Raiders. Broncos are favored at 7.5 in Las Vegas. Surely the Broncos win this game.
Yeah, do you think they cover the 7.5? That's a big spread. I think like you have a tough game versus the Commanders. You should be riding a little bit high on that, and you should have more Broncos fans than Vegas. So do you think they can finally break out a little bit in this game and beat up an opponent?
They should. However, they've been playing really close games, and I think the Raiders have enough offensive firepower that they could. But yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't bet this game. I don't feel super confident in either side of it. Raiders, I've learned there's few teams that I don't bet against, and one of them is the Raiders. So I would take the Broncos to win, but I'm not touching that spread.
Yeah, that'll be a tough one. I'll take the Broncos to win as well. And then definitely that spread looks a little bit suspicious. And the Broncos, they've just been doing the bare minimum to win games.
Anytime I see a 7.5, I'm like, oh, so the NFL is going to cover it, depending on how it goes. So I don't know,
Rams and
suspicious
Cardinals
there.
also 7.5 point spread.
Also 7.5. And I will say, I'm not a huge Cardinals supporter these days. However, I will say they do play pretty hard against the Rams. Let me look at their record against the Rams the last 10 years because historically I feel like they play them pretty close. Let me look. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of the
They play them
Seahawks.
close, but I
But
don't think they beat them. I think Sean McVay's kind of owned the Cardinals.
so they're split recently. If we look at their record, they are 3-7 in the last 10 games. However, 13-9. We have actually, yeah, never mind. It's actually been pretty much a bloodbath. So Rams should cover. Rams, especially coming off of a loss. Sean McVay versus I don't even know his head. Jonathan Gannon, the guy that's going to be fired in 4 weeks. I'll take the Rams.
It's like, so we saw what Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel did, and we want to talk to you about that in our office. And the conversation goes, "You're fired. Get out of here. Go. Leave. You're holding a cardboard box. Get out of Arizona. Stop melting in the sand."
Who took the bus today?
Who took the bus?
That's going to be his lasting remarks. Who took the bus today? Nobody raises their hand.
Coach took the bus out of here.
Coach, yeah, good luck, buddy. Go to Sedona and have a good time. And
don't do fentanyl in the sun.
Yeah, get out of here, buddy. Go somewhere cool, somewhere not Arizona. So yeah, I think the Rams win. And then Bears, Packers, the primetime game for the most part on the 4:00 slates. Packers are favored at 6.5 in Green Bay. It's going to be 20 degrees there. Bring your jackets if you're so lucky to be in Green Bay at this time. Bears and Packers. The Bears have been one of those teams this year that they've overcome some demons. They've lost a lot of close games in the past. This year, they're winning a lot of close games. Packers, they looked impressive. It is Toyota-thon. Maybe I'm crazy, but Bears overcoming some demons, beating the Packers potentially.
No, you're crazy. Because Caleb Williams' last game can't even throw for 50%. You have not one, but two running backs go for 120 plus yards on the ground this game. And while the Bears have been really good on defense, I just think this is a Packers team where Toyota-thon love is a real thing. He just comes off a game against the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson where he does not get sacked, does not turn the ball over, and he throws for 4 touchdowns, and his favorite target in Christian Watson is back. You have Josh Jacobs back in this game, and honestly, the Eagles game is a good win because they're a Super Bowl contender and they have a really good defense. However, I don't think beating the Eagles is as impressive as it seems. So I think the Bears are going to come down to earth a little bit, but I don't think that's a bad thing, especially since you've struggled in Green Bay historically. So my gut right now is still leaning Green Bay, even though I think this should be a great game and I can see a scenario with the Bears winning, but just my gut is telling me the Packers are going to win. When I picked against it the past few weeks, has not turned out very well. So I'm going to stick with that.
I think the 6.5 point spread is interesting. I do think the Bears can cover that. But I think this could come down to a field goal. And it depends on how much the Bears can contain the Packers offense. If the Packers offense, which has had clunky moments throughout the season, then I think it's going to be a lot more in the Bears' favor. But Packers post Toyota-thon, maybe I shouldn't bet against them. Last 2 primetime games to cover. We have the Texans and Chiefs. Chiefs are favored at 3.5 at home in Arrowhead. And I don't know about you. This Chiefs team is not the Chiefs team that we've seen in years past. They've struggled. They've lost a lot of close games. I sense this game is going to be a close game. And I feel like what this game really is going to be the death of the Chiefs this season. Because I do think the Texans are going to win this game, especially with CJ Stroud coming back, Nico Collins playing great, Woody Marks playing excellent as well. It's going to be close. I think the under is potentially in play here, but I like the Texans to put a nail in the Chiefs' coffin.
Yeah, and the Texans have played tough over the past few weeks. You just beat the Bills. You just went on the road and beat the Indianapolis Colts, who played a tough, close game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. But with how the Chiefs' offense has looked this season, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to go up against that defense for Houston, especially in a cold game in Kansas City, and come out on top. So I definitely think the Texans should win this game, but honestly, this is going to be a game where it's also going to be tough for Houston to score because it's going to be in Kansas City. You have to look at the fact that Kansas City has been much better at home this year. The only problem is they haven't been winning one possession games. The only time that they did was against the Indianapolis Colts. That was against Daniel Jones. So do you think the Texans should win this game? But it's going to be a lot tougher than I think a lot of people will think. Because Kansas City, this is pretty much their last ditch effort to make the playoffs. You lose this game, pretty much done. But if you win this game, you have a good shot of potentially overtaking Buffalo if they lose to New England and Cincinnati.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, that's a good point. I'll take the Texans, but I do think this is the last ditch effort for the Chiefs. If they lose this game, it's over. So we'll see if this is the death note of the Chiefs that we may see. And then lastly is Monday Night Football, Eagles and Chargers. Eagles are favored at 3 points in SoFi. And this is a tough game for me to pick because the Chargers, they are starting to get back to full strength. Amari and Hampton's back. They have Joel potentially returning. This team defensively has played very well. And on the Eagles side, their offense has been sputtering pretty much since the Giants game at this point. So I do think that they are very vulnerable here. I'm going to lean the Chargers in this game. I think the Chargers win this game on primetime. Justin Herbert has played well in primetime regular season for most of his career. We've seen duels with Patrick Mahomes here in the past. So give me the Chargers to upset the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Chargers should win this game. The only thing that concerns me is Justin Herbert did just have surgery. He's day to day. So if Justin Herbert doesn't play in this game, give me the Eagles to win. But if he does play, the Eagles just seem like they're on one of those Super Bowl hangover skids. And it's not like we haven't seen this story before with the Philadelphia Eagles where they start out as the number one seed and then proceed to kind of fall apart at the end of the year after making it to a Super Bowl. They did lose last time, but their defense has really been what's keeping this team together. So I do think I don't necessarily see their offense breaking out. Saquon Barkley hasn't looked like himself this season. Seems like AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are not on the same page at all. So I think, Herbert plays in this game. They should win. If he doesn't, then Philadelphia has to win because then if you lose this game, you have Dallas, who's a half game behind you, right on your heels. So you're pretty much in win. You have to win out pretty much to keep Dallas off your tail.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, the Eagles, their last Super Bowl run, they had that Super Bowl hangover where they were 11-0 and finished 11-6. This time around, they start off hot. Now they've lost how many games in a row? They've lost the last 2 games.
2.
And that Packers game was 10-7. That Lions game was 10-9, 16-9. So they haven't scored over 20 points all but once against the Cowboys, which was 21 points. So their offense has just been sputtering. Saquon is not looking like the same guy. If they feed AJ Brown, they can't score any points. Devontae Smith has been inconsistent for them as well. So yeah, I think I like the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, and that's my gut feeling going overall. But we just recapped one of the most monumental weeks in football where we called every single big game correctly. And we have the playoff picture shaping up, and we did a deep dive on that. So make sure you go back and check it out if you didn't see that and you're catching it after the fact, and then previewed all the games. So we'll see how we do this week. But yeah, this will be an exciting week of football. We have a lot of lessons to learn. Texans and Chiefs, Eagles and Chargers, I think is big for both teams. Packers and Bears, I'm really excited for that. Bengals and Bills, also excited for that. So we have some, and then Cowboys and Lions to start off the week. So I think this is going to be another electric week of football. So I am psyched for week 14. But in between then, have you been watching anything or playing any games, listening to any music you want to shout out this week?
Yeah, I watched Stranger Things, the new season. They're releasing it in 3 parts. So they have this part, and then one that releases on Christmas, and then one that releases on New Year's Day. And Stranger Things is one of those shows where it probably should have ended sooner. Like it probably should have ended season 3 or season 4, especially now that these people are a decade in to doing Stranger Things. Stranger Things, for context, came out when I removed my wisdom teeth junior year. So it's been a long time since Stranger Things has existed. And that being said, though, I'm excited to see the conclusion of the show. And I'm not going to say I've had a bad time enjoying this show this year. However, it's very clear to me when I watch a show or movie and you know that going into it that they never really had a clear plan. They're kind of figuring it out each season. There's plenty of examples we can shout out, but Stranger Things is that show. It's a show that clearly going through it, they're trying to piece all of these different seasons that they've had in the past together. Season 2, they had this 8 character that came out of nowhere. Never really explored that timeline. They've had Vecna. Who is Vecna? Where is he coming from? How did he become this? Where does the Upside Down? There's so many plot points that they need to configure together over the next 4 episodes. And I'm not really convinced that they're going to be able to do that because they've introduced new plot lines and new characters, and it hasn't answered and solved any of the questions that were leading into the show. Like, for example, the fact that, for spoilers, you've had fucking 3 years to watch season 4. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it for you, but the whole entire city is under lockdown. They have the Upside Down that split the whole city in half to end the season 4. Doesn't explain. They flash forward like 2 years and they're still in high school, even though it's been a decade. And I'm just curious, like, what happened? Like, what happened in between there? What's going on with Nancy? What's going on with Mike? Like, what's going on with all these characters? What's going on with Max? Also, as I continue to rant about Stranger Things, how come none of the characters have died, even though they've faced literal demons the last 4 seasons? For me, I want to see bloodshed. I want to see every single character die. I don't want a happy story. I'm sorry. I just want to see blood and murder. That's just unfortunately the cynical in me. That's just why I do the worst top 5s. But it's just a show that clearly did not have a plan for multiple seasons. Season 1 was successful, so they milked it. But yeah, this season they need to answer some plot points. But so far, it's been confusing.
Yeah, and I feel like shows just have a problem where you really don't know if you're going to get greenlit past season 1, so there's not necessarily a vision or like a long-term plot laid out. Where I feel like a show like Breaking Bad had like 5 seasons planned out, and the show um network kind of gives you that in advance. Game of Thrones, you kind of have a source reference as far as the books, and once you were sticking to the books and you before you passed them, you had a plan there. But it seems like some shows just get renewed and they're like, oh wait, you mean we got renewed, so we actually have to come up with a storyline. And it also just seems like the cast isn't really into the show. It seems like Millie Bobby Brown really doesn't want to do it, and after season 4 she's kind of getting sick of it. She has a lot of movie roles coming her way, but like overall it just seemed like it's been going on for too long. And I watched season 1. I thought it was fine, but mind you, I was a freshman in high school when that came out. If you're in your junior year of high school, so I was like 13, 14 years old when it came out. And then season 2 was kind of just boring, and then a lot of people rank it as their worst season. And then by the time season 3 came around, it didn't do enough early on for me to want to keep watching it. And I get it's like a good nostalgic vibe for a lot of people, but I don't have nostalgia for the 80s. Sorry. Like I don't have nostalgia for that time. I like, shows like That 70s Show. I like the Andy Griffith Show, which takes place in like the 60s, but like I don't really feel that nostalgia for the Stranger Things. Like if you like the soundtrack, that's cool, but I think for a show like that, and if you're going to do a horror show, it's a lot more valuable to make the monsters less seen. And if I'm seeing them in the trailer, for me, that's a bad sign. And it goes from becoming like kind of a horror vibe, which I like from the first season, where it's a lot more mystery. You don't really know what's going on, where it seems like the mystery in the newer seasons is just that the writers don't know what they're doing and they can't figure out the plot. So it's like the mystery is that it's convoluted, but you can see the monsters and they're not really scary when you can just see the monster out in the open all the time. Like I want it a little bit more kind of up to your own discretion to decide what's going on.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think like with especially sci-fi shows, which I think you can kind of lump it into there with, is like sci-fi shows and movies are supposed to be more historically, they're more visually packed, and maybe the plot is missing there historically. I point to like Star Trek and Star Wars as a prime example of that, where maybe the plot doesn't always make sense for them and there's a lot of plot holes. more or less it's the visuals. And the visuals in the show are definitely there. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Nobody wants to do the show anymore. Finn Wolfhard, he's had a number of roles. He was in It. He's been successful. Sadie Sink, she's successful now as a model. Joe Keery makes music now, just AKA Steve Harrington. Um, and now they're doing spinoffs of Stranger Things before it's even over. So what it feels like to me, like watching the show, is that instead of planning for the conclusion, and again, there's 4 more episodes, maybe they wrap it together, and I'll preview it when it does, but it feels like instead of funneling in like what's going on, they're going to try to just make reboots that explain it, or ultimately spin-offs of the show that explains the show more. And to me, I think that's lazy. I think you should explain the show in the show. Don't have us read a fucking book. You're not Star Wars. That's what Star Wars does, and that's the worst thing about Star Wars. Just like tell us what's happening. Like tell the audience what's happening, and maybe then I'll be bought in.
Yeah, and like I saw the like on the trailer the schedule release for the show. I'm like, oh my god, Netflix is not only are they doing a one like a 5A and a 5B, but they're also waiting to do the finale for a week later. Like the nice thing about a Netflix show was you sit down and you can just binge the whole season. It's now we're reverting back to we're gonna do a part two, we're gonna do a part three, and they're just dragging it out. And I don't feel I feel like the payoff's just not gonna be worth it. Seems like the kind of like new Star Wars movies where after season, two, they're kind of just making it up as they go.
Yeah, I agree. And they're going to release the finale in theaters. You're going to watch the
What?
finale. Yeah, they're releasing it in theaters, the final conclusion, because it's going to be a 2-hour episode. So you can literally buy tickets to see the last episode of Stranger Things in theaters. They're milking it. I also think the release schedule has to also do with renewing subscriptions. That's another conspiracy of mine, and I'm probably not off there. But yeah, I think it's very obvious that they're kind of going for like the Star Wars appeal. The difference is that Star Wars is more established, and Stranger Things, I feel like it's going to be a relic of the 2010s. And if they don't stick the landing, the show is going to go from a really good show to a show that was cool to watch in high school.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be like one of the best shows of all time where once it finishes, I don't really think people are going to talk about it too much. Like, oh, yeah, that was kind of fun when it came out, but then Netflix ruined it as they ruin everything, like The Witcher.
It's like pop culture. It's a pop culture moment. Like it's cool that they're ending it, but yeah, they should have ended it 3 years ago when everyone was, I don't know, in high school.
Yeah.
So,
So,
nonetheless, though, what have you been watching?
so I've been playing the sequel to the first Spider-Man game. I like the first one. I don't. Did you play that one when it came out in 2018?
I haven't played a Spider-Man in a long time, but I have heard great things about the Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah, so the first one came out, and that one you're fighting the Sinister Six, and Doc Ock is the main villain in that one. Then they set it up for Miles Morales, and then this sequel came out 5 years after the first one. First one was 2018. This one comes out in 2023, and playing this one on the PlayStation 5. So this one was on sale, picked it up on Thanksgiving where it didn't have too much to do. So it's flipping back and forth between this game and The Sopranos. And for a sequel, the way they kind of balance Miles Morales and Peter Parker, I think it's really cool. And they also have Venom as the villain in this game. So you get to play as Peter Parker when he's in the Venom suit. So he kind of has that villain arc. And then there's a scene in the game where you're able to play as Venom, and you kind of have Craven the Hunter in this game as the main driver of the plot where it's simple. He likes to hunt big game, and in New York they have the biggest and they have the baddest villains. They also have Spider-Man who he can go out there and hunt, and then he gets involved with Venom, wanting to hunt him because he's also the ultimate predator. And then they introduce Harry Osborn in this game, and he has like a critical illness, so he needs the Venom suit to survive essentially. Except there's a point where it's not really a spoiler, but Peter almost dies in this game, and then the Venom suit ends up taking over. So you kind of have the conflict with him and Harry, where Harry's dying and he needs the suit, but with what the symbiote does to you, it kind of corrupts you, makes you evil over time. So Spider-Man turns into a villain for part of this game, and then you get to also play as Miles Morales, who's there driving the plot as well. So I think how they tied in Craven, you also fight Lizard Man in this game, and then also Venom. Made pretty good headway in this game, but it's overall been fun. And then they improved the combat and the mechanics enough, I think, to justify a sequel. And I think like the first Spider-Man game was really good, really fun when it came out. I didn't really hear too much about the sequel to Spider-Man, but overall, I thought like they improved the combat in this game. Added some cool features in this one. It's fun to swing around the city, and that's like the biggest part. They add like a little paraglider thing, kind of like Fortnite in this one. But yeah, overall, I dig Venom in this one. Craven the Hunter was a cool villain. Also, Lizard Man, another underrated Spider-Man one. So this was a fun play.
Yeah, I feel like Spider-Man games, I used to play them a lot on the PS3 and 4, and I had a great time. It's a fun game. Spider-Man's probably my favorite superhero. So, especially when they have Venom and they have some of the other characters that haven't really had a lot of screen time on the big screen. I feel like it's good, especially if you're into the comic book lore of Spider-Man, but it seems like it's a fun game to play and the game I mean, I think it won a bunch of game awards too, the Spider-Man that you're talking about. So it's a well received Spider-Man game, and those are games that are historically, I feel like they usually hit it pretty well when it comes to those games.
Yeah, and everyone loved the first Spider-Man when it came out. I think that one may have won Game of the Year, but it was a lot of people's favorite game when it came out in 2018. I feel like they took 5 years to release the sequel in 2023, so that's like for me like a perfect time, like once every half decade to justify releasing a new game. I haven't finished it quite yet. I think the story's pretty much wrapped up, but it was definitely fun swing around the city. There's a lot of good customization you can do. There's like a lot of different Spider-Man suits in this one. They each have like three or four different colors you can use as well if you're into that.
Yeah, that's fun. So yeah, let me know when you finish that game. But yeah, we covered our worst top five, best top five. We previewed all of the games for week 14, gave us a concise playoff picture. We also talked about all the games that you may have missed in the Thanksgiving week 13. Talked about Stranger Things season 5 and the new Spider-Man as well. You have been recapped, you have been briefed. Message of